Hello, everybody. This is Adrian Crenshaw. This is Irongeek cast number 22, sought in Cleveland, because I'm going up to B-Sides Cleveland here this weekend. I am joined by Brian, Jack, Mary, and Logan was on, but then Logan left. Well, he may come back on. B-Sides Cleveland. And let me stop that now. We know that it's going. And I also need to put the invite link inside of that chat. There we go. I hope everybody's doing okay. Hey, Danny boy, the pipes are calling.
Long time.
All right, normal announcements. HackerCons I have coming up. I have most of my HackerCons for the year out. I think I've done like 14, 15. Wait, one. Oh, crap. I have to go back and look at another file to actually see this. The ones I still have upcoming are B-Sides Cleveland this weekend. Then DerbyCon, which I don't have my dates for in my file, strangely enough. I'll be at SkyDogCon. That's April 20th through the 22nd. October 20th through the 22nd. GurCon, October 26th through the 27th. And HackerCon, November 17th through the 19th. And then I have about 5 other cons lined up for next year already. This year may be only a 19-year con. 19-con year, because OISF is apparently not happening this year. The Ohio Information Security Forum. That usually happens around about this time, but for whatever reason, they didn't get things together this year, so that's not happening. How's everybody doing today?
Pretty good.
Doing good.
Well, I guess I'm doing mostly pretty well, other than, some stressful stuff to make sure I'm juggling various things I need to get taken care of this week so I can get to B-Sides Cleveland. Found out I'm going to be recording 2 people there that I actually have blocked on Twitter. That's going to be interesting.
Are you allowed to tell us which 2?
I might do it off air. I don't know. Well, one I blocked because she blocked me first. The other one I blocked because they seem like I'm in China.
Oh, it's so sad that people have to get like the political crap all wrapped up in InfoSec when I really just want to talk about stuff.
What's it? Because I see you whine about me bringing my politics into my InfoSec stuff. But I'm like, wait, but you complain about me bringing my politics into InfoSec stuff. You're bringing in politics. Also, you have like social activists in your fucking Twitter profile. What the fuck?
Well, it was like my class. I think not this week, but last week's, it was, we were talking about data and uploads and downloads and stuff, and they were discussing the biodata disks. I guess that's the next thing is the DNA to save files, like how much data can you fit in the DNA for the new bio stuff. And I start giggling, and a single sperm cell holds 755 megabytes of data, so it's about the size of a standard CD-ROM.
Okay.
And one individual load is, what was it? 315,000 gig, I think it was. But yeah, we had discussed that. Of course, they're all looking because I'm the only girl in the class, and they're just like, "I'm so glad a woman brought that up and not one of us," because I'm like, I don't care.
That's one of the things that also kind of gets me weirded out. There are some women who, if you bring up anything sexual, they want to make a big deal out about it, and I don't understand. It was something like equal, like the whole the hacker what was it? Hacker Jeopardy. I mean, yeah, actually it was a man who was whining about this. A man was talking about women. Scantily clad women bringing men beers. Like,
there was guys doing the same. I got pictures from both ends, but I'm just saying, even the whole data sperm count load thing. Number one, it's funny, and number two, I find that interesting because that much actual data, which is kind of fascinating if you really think about it. Like, what is the actual data makeup of a human body, or how much can your brain actually hold? And like that's fascinating to me. It's like how many
stuff. Yeah, the Hacker Jeopardy thing. Yeah, there was a scantily clad man who bringing beers to women too. But to your point about the biology thing, A lot of that, though, as far as genetic information, my understanding, a lot of the genetic information we pass on isn't actually used. Like, there's a lot of dead genes that don't get expressed.
Which is true also, but you also have to take into consideration, like, if you were to translate that into how many of my, Photoshop files could I save in my fingernail?
Oh, I'm going to turn my webcam on for just a second. Let me see. You remember this guy, right?
Is that the Trump Snorty? I love that, though. It's so cute.
Yeah, unfortunately, I kind of tried. I don't know what I was trying to do exactly. I put some like brush on electrical tape on its head, and I can't get it all off. So I may have to sculpt him a new pompadour, or what do you call that hair? I have to do him a new comb over. Yeah, I made that for Miss Batch just to mess with her because I know she really hates Trump, and I thought it'd be funny. But she collects Snorties, so I thought I'm an asshole. So
it's so cute.
What'd you say, Danny?
I was like, he's so orange. I want like 7 of him.
Well, I thought about casting the first head sculpt and then just reproducing it real quick. Then all I need is the orange marker because it actually snaps on top of the hat.
That's awesome.
Send me a bunch of Snorties. I will totally. I will like mass produce those. They're just adorable.
I'll have to go find some more. I picked up that one at Circle City Con, I think, and then reproduced it.
There's got to be some factory in China that's like hogging like like all the extra like all the ones that didn't meet spec.
Well, this one Snorty I got back in like I don't know 2008 from them what's that company called? It's Cisco now, but Snort.
When it was Snort?
Yeah, Snort was his own company at one time, and Cisco bought them. But I figured they may have a different name. Like Snort was the product, but the company had a different name. I don't remember.
Sourcefire?
Yeah, thank you. Sourcefire. At the time, they didn't have their own sculpt of Snorty, so they basically just used a generic piggy bank that was meant for like bank promotions.
Mm-hmm.
All right. I'm assuming George Forbush has been our fandom editor on the show notes. The first question he has in here is InfoSec still a thing? Anything even happened this past week? Well, we have a couple more things in the show notes a little bit later on, but any major events anybody wants to talk about?
I can't talk about my major events, so.
All right. The next thing's up is calligraphy. How legible is your signature? How elegant? Let's compare. Mine is shit, and I think I'm not going to write it on the screen. I do have this little rant, though, about, and once had a lawyer made a big deal about this a dispute I had with the campus, or something, a deal about me not having something signed. I don't understand why a human signature is still used as a verification, because my handwriting varies so much depending on the surface I'm writing on, especially like a digital pad. And my handwriting is so inconsistent, I don't see how it's a reliable indicator that I'm actually the person who is physically there to sign something. How's y'all's handwriting?
Hold on, I'll show you, but I need to find a stylist.
Yours is probably better than most of us because you do artwork. I mean, so you.
I totally want to show off because that makes me money.
Yeah, okay.
There we go. Can you guys hear me?
How's it going, man?
Well, I've got an Apple product and I'm using Internet Explorer, so not too good.
Oh, okay.
Oh, poor thing.
No Safari?
I tried with Firefox, and for some reason the damn plugin's not working. So
yeah, the plugin's not working in Firefox on Mac. I'm currently using Mac also, and I'm using Chrome.
Yeah, go figure. Google doesn't have their shit together. What a surprise.
Oh.
Well, Google has its shit together if it's all Google stuff. For instance, Chrome is working for me. But yeah, Firefox stopped working for me a couple months ago, and I had to switch to Chrome.
Yeah, sounds more so to the fact that they're trying to force people to use Chrome instead of actually, working with other vendors. So I have no respect for any institution that tries to do that. I never have. God, I'm using an Apple product. It feels disgusting.
Doesn't it kind of feel dirty and childish at the same time?
I feel like I'm 12 and I'm playing with something.
Dave Lau apparently posted this on my.
Make yourself feel mildly better. Opened up the command prompt and just like type like ls dash whatever and df and du, and at least then some shit will be on the screen and you won't feel so bad.
Dave Lau sent this to me on Twitter because he's apparently listening to the podcast. Hi, Dave. A human cell has 750 megabytes of DNA information. A sperm cell has half of it, 37.5 megabytes. A milliliter of semen has 100 million sperm cells. On average, an ejaculation lasts 5 seconds and has 2.24 milliliters of semen. That means a man is able to produce. He does the calculation. La, da, 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 I'm not going to do. Equals 100. Wait, 1 million. Now, wait, no, Sam. I mean, it's all. I'm fucking this up. What? Why the hell did you put the decimal places? That's not the decimal place.
Because Google, the numbers I was going off of.
875 terabytes a second.
Yeah, something like that. But it's crazy because it's like.
This means an overt is able to receive a DDoS attack of 1.6 terabytes per second and only lets one backstage pass, making it the best firewall in the world.
I guess that explains Brian Krebs.
True.
I think this is like European.
No one packet make through.
This is European notation where they use like a comma to represent what we use a period for.
Oh, nobody got my joke. I feel so
I didn't
lonely.
hear it though. Sorry.
I said that explains Brian Krebs.
I still don't get it. Sorry.
You don't get it? He got hit with over a terabyte DDoS.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Oh, Ace?
Yeah, he got wrecked.
Bitter swallow. Anyway, I really shouldn't be doing this with kids in the room. What do you want? What do you want? I'm talking to a bunch of guys that like do computer stuff, but you don't like that because you like sat through my living class the other day and played like stupid games the entire time instead of taking no pay attention. You learn how to hack your computer. Anyway.
So you gonna show us your signature? How's everybody else's handwriting? My handwriting has gone to shit over the last 20 years because pretty much the only time I write anything by hand is to sign checks.
Yeah, handwriting's totally different from signature. Yeah, my signature doesn't represent my handwriting at all, or vice versa.
No.
And my signature is pretty consistent, but that happened when I had to sign it, 500,000 times in a short period of time. But yeah, my handwriting has gone through changes. My signature hasn't.
Wow. Everything in the App Store costs money. It's outstanding.
The draw thing. Because I'm just have vanilla.
What's vanilla now?
If you use Hangouts on the laptop, I can pop over the thing and the draw.
You're really hard to understand.
Speed up. This is why I'm looking for bandwidth.
Oh, that's the bandwidth cutting out on you. Yeah.
I'll try. Damn it.
We need to start a Patreon for Mary to search for bandwidth, but I just don't think there's many options out where she lives.
Surely not.
Okay, how about we start a collection to move Mary closer to us?
But she wants a farm, though. If she wants a farm, that means she can't be that close.
I just want to find who has the fiber in my area. That's all I want.
The fiber in my area. They won't come out here. Because my county sucks.
I've been told, I remember reading something a while back, this was like maybe more than 10 years ago, that before the .com bubble burst and so forth, there was a lot of fiber that was laid out, but the like the last mile issue, the to the door thing, wasn't exactly resolved.
Right, fiber to the curb.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
my understanding is there's a lot of fiber infrastructure out there that's basically dark, not used.
Yeah, we have dark fiber within 5 miles of the house. It's just that we can't get it here. Like we'd have to literally lay our own lines to the fiber because we know where it is. We just they won't bring it here.
I'm not likely to get here. I heard something about fiber coming to Louisville, but I don't think I'm part of the metro area.
Yeah, that's Google Fiber, but actually, there's already a lot of fiber here in the area. I mean, with Spectrum, formerly Time Warner Cable, formerly Insight, formerly Store. Insight laid a lot of fiber back in the 90s and just kept upgrading it until they got taken over. AT&T has a lot of fiber in the Louisville area, and now Google wants to bring in their own fiber, which is bringing down the prices of internet access.
Yeah, but what's the price for that? What are they doing with your data?
I don't know. I mean, they are going to wind up undercutting AT&T by $10 on all packages. So I don't know. I don't know. I mean, they're probably not going to do anything any different than say Spectrum does with your data. AT&T definitely, the NSA is definitely sucking up all those bits. So
yeah. Maybe that's what I'll do with my pipes for like the first couple of months. I'll just generate astronomical amounts of just push and just keep sending thousands and thousands of files back and forth, just generating astronomical amounts of data to just fry somebody's end system for whoever's collecting data.
Mm.
You'd like eat it. Feed the fat kid with a water hose, so to speak.
I figure anybody spying on my connection, the porn would probably make them lose their minds before they'll actually, come after me.
Oh, you mean for research purposes?
Exactly.
It's very important for research purposes or something. But,
Yes. Math, science, and division. Get started. Oh, wow. I wonder how far this goes.
How far what goes?
Holy crap, Khan Academy teaches, like, differential calculus. That is insane.
Yeah, our was pretty true. It's kind of spotty because it'll say really cool raffle, then giant gap in information before the next thing.
Can't say. That's a lot of crypto. Oh, this is lame. I'm so disappointed.
Jedi Day says, tell Matt just to run some fiber from work. I don't know if that's going to work out.
Yeah, who's going to run me the fiber? Hey, if somebody wants to run me fiber, that would be outstanding. I need a lot of fiber. I'm open to any other solutions than what I've been presented with so far.
Oh, what you want a direct connect from level 3?
If I could get NNI, that'd be great. Yeah, but right now I'm looking at a 100 gig connection right now. And that is going to run about $15,000 a month. This thing is Satan. How do I work with this thing?
What thing is this we're talking about?
An iPad?
Oh,
There's no X button to close things. How do they close things?
I think you have to swipe left.
It's... Dear Lord, this was the shittiest design ever.
I know. I despise all the Apple products because of that. Like my Matt got the kid an iPhone, I can't do anything with it. I just like stare at it. I'm like, okay, and fuck. It's like, well, can you like? No, I can't. I don't. Here, give it to Dad because I'm not fucking with it.
15,000 on 100 gig actually doesn't sound all that bad.
Yeah, it's not, but the issue is I have to have that as my backhaul. So my uplinks to my backhaul are also 10,000 a piece, and they're only 10 gig connections. So I'm going to have to run 10 gig connections to get my backhaul uplink, my uplink to my backhaul. And so that's going to be 15,000 for my backhaul, and then it's going to be 100,000 a month for my uplink. And that's per 100, and I'm looking to run 4 100s.
Adds up quick.
Yeah, it's $500,000 a month just for fucking internet. Oh, sorry, Adrian.
That's okay. You can fucking cuss as much as you fucking want.
Yeah.
You know, because fucking YouTube doesn't seem to fucking care.
This is not really a fucking kid show, so it's all fucking good.
It's okay. I'm fucking outside and she is not, so she can't hear me.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. No, she's up playing Minecraft. So.
Swift. What is
But-
Swift?
but,
oh, that's the
Adrian, I thought you were starting Irongeek for kids.
Yeah, well, that's over well.
I would have to do so much editing. He'd have to pay me. Might be fun though.
Okay, I'm getting more followers again. I don't know what the hell I did recently. I guess. Oh, IndieCon. I was at IndieCon in New Albany, New York. First time I've ever been in New York State. That actually was pretty damn cool con. Things came out pretty well. A few things went there the first day. It was also the first con. So, but they seem to have a decent turnout, and they plan on doing it again next year.
I'm from New York.
Yeah, you were from you were in New York. You like raised in New York. Then you went down to Georgia. Then you went to California. Then you're in Indiana.
Something like that.
Why did you choose Indiana to settle in? Is that where Matt's from?
Husband got a job here.
Okay.
And it was either move back to California and roll some dice and see how long the bubble stayed before it burst again, or settle here where supposedly he had a stable gig.
Well, he's been there for a few years now, so I imagine it seems fairly stable.
Well, when actually I quit my job and moved here, and we lived in the apartment together for a bit, and then the sequester happened because stupid shit, and then he lost his job, and then I had to go work at Lowe's.
Oh.
And then I worked at Lowe's for a while until he got hired at the Marines in Indianapolis. And then I did that, and he worked, and we did our back and forth thing for a bit. And then we had a completely freaking ass insane neighbor who threatened to decapitate my dogs. And I looked at him and I said, screw this shit, we're moving. And then we bought a house. And then literally the day after we signed the contract on our house to close it, he lost his job at the other place. And I went back to Lowe's or something like that. I don't remember, but something happened and it was bullshit. And then I was working at other things, and then he got a job at a different place, and then he ended up with a job at Fort Knox, and he was working down at Fort Knox when the people from Crane called him for his current job. And so he was literally renting an apartment in Kentucky and working down there, and then the people for the local gig is where he's working now is literally 5 miles from the house, which is where he was working before.
Yeah.
So it's whatever. So while he was in Kentucky, they're like, oh, well, do you know the area and this and that? And he was kind of laughing on the phone interview because he was describing the road they all travel down to cut to work because it's right behind where we're at. And they're like, wow, how do you know all this? You do this? I was like, oh, what? He's like, well, I have a farm. He's like, what? You bought a farm? No, I live there. It's I literally, and I was teasing them. I'm like, they think you live in Kentucky. You should just totally get them to pay for your move. So I thought it was funny, but no, he ended up getting the gig over there at Crane.
Well, I've been wondering about that. Because I've been approached by recruiters for that place. And
what location?
Up at Crane?
Yeah.
Take it. It's actually fairly. I mean, depends on I don't know what company, but the one he's at is really good. It's a great atmosphere. It's pretty stable.
Nope. Nope.
But well, I don't know why you want to nope. No, it depends on where you live. So you can live in Bloomington, and
But
there's no
I live
reason
in Louisville, and that's the problem.
Well, that's not that far though. It's only like an hour and a half drive. That's like nothing. Like hell, I had a 3-hour commute in LA traffic living like 15 miles from work. So I mean that's like the thing. And for us, like we lived in Atlanta, we lived in LA. Where a 3-hour commute to drive 15 miles happens, and so we always laugh when people go, "Oh my God, Indiana traffic," and we just like
laugh.
It was slow for like I blinked and we're moving again. So it's like yeah, I can handle a bottleneck for 5 miles. That's still moving at faster than 35 miles an hour because you would sit in traffic on the 10.
I'm kind of Jack on this one. I don't think I can handle an hour and a half commute.
I mean, I did 45 minutes back and forth to Fort Knox, but
well, you're not
90. That's
further.
pushing it.
You're not that much further though, because you go Bedford to Louisville because we're north of Bedford, or if you do kind of, or it depends if you want to rent or we'll put you up during the week. People do that a lot too, or that they'll they stay up for the week and go down, and most of those jobs you only have to be there for the first month or so, and then after that you telecommute. So check to see which job it is, because a lot of those jobs you can VPN in, so that might be an option.
Yeah, but I mean, I VPN with my current job, so I'm good.
It depends on the pay rate. I mean, if it's worth it, it's worth it.
Yeah.
But they have on French Lick, like if you moved up like French Lick, Jasper County, that's all fiber now. Smithville just did that entire area. So that's all fiber down French Lick, and that's nice. That's all like, fancy. And that's not that far. That's down south. That's not French Lick isn't that far from like Seymour. And that's not that much further north. So that wouldn't be too bad actually. Oh my God! And speaking of friggin' internet, WiMAX, Amish country. That's what I need to do. Is I need to pull all this shit up here and just go move down to Odin. Friggin', that's what I was gonna do to you guys last Hackers on the Farm. I was gonna throw you all in my truck and drive down to like Dinkies and just drive out in the middle of the field somewhere, surrounded by Amish buggies and people plowing their fields with teams of horses, and be like, check this shit out, and pop up my laptop and show you fucking WiMAX coverage at like 40 gig or some shit up and down in the middle of friggin' Amish country. It's stupid.
That's pretty outstanding.
It is amazing. It is amazing and painful at the same time because
they're probably doing a line of sight shot.
Well, the reason they're doing it is because Crane's there. So something like I was talking to Matt because Crane, the guest gate's out of Odin, which is right there where like Amish country is. So that's like something like 40% of whatever that utility coverage is. That's why that they have it. So yeah, there's friggin' WiMAX blanketing that entire area. Sad. But Dinkies, the Amish auction, has faster internet than I do, to be honest. I get 4G. I get full 4G at the Amish auction. So yeah, I really should just move down. That's where I should go. All my neighbors would be Yoders.
Yodas?
All the Yoders.
What's a Yoda?
The Amish, the Yoders and the Grabbers and the Ezekiel and Jebediah and all the Amishes.
And what else do I have up next in this? Someone posted this in one of my chat groups. Hacktivists break into Minnesota government database to protest Orlando Castillo's verdict. Now, the data they seem to dump, the best as I can tell from looking at it, and I have the link in the show notes, seems to be they compromised some like fully secured P8, some fully secured form system, and got a bunch of people's email addresses, password hashes, and other things. But it doesn't seem to be anything that, well, it doesn't help the case of of what happened to. However, it doesn't solve the problem of an undertrained cop who was a little bit
Trigger happy.
way too rookie.
Yeah.
So I was looking at some of the data, and it's like, okay, I sometimes suspect the hacktivists basically find something to hack, something they can break into, and then make a justification after the fact.
Yeah.
Because it doesn't help the injustice that happened in this particular issue. From what I've seen in the video, I mean, a lot of stuff I see from Black Lives Matter, a lot of the cases they bring up is like, no, that person you're complaining about, it was a good reason they got shot. In this case, in Philando Castile's case, no, it looks like he was basically doing everything he could do pretty much correctly. Other than like some superficial shit, like someone made a big deal about smelling pot in the car. I don't give a shit.
Yeah.
I mean, if I smell pot, I become less paranoid. I'm like,
that as bullshit as the whole thing was, and yeah, the cop was way too jumpy. I think in some ways, the Black Lives Matter pushing so hard and all the other ones kind of created the situation in a way because they got it had to be in that kid that young cop's head in such a friggin' panic over what's going to happen in 40 different ways that got under there to a degree and screwed up his judgment. So in no way should he have ever done that, and that's definitely a problem with his training. But I think that extra pressure with the media and the way it was pushed didn't help any.
The way the media pushes it, though, wouldn't that make him actually less likely to shoot?
Not necessarily, because when you're jumpy and your fingers on the trigger and you're not thinking, that's the problem. Is then that's what I'm saying. Is his judgment was poor. Either way, I don't think the extra stress was helping it. Which also his force should have. There needed, and what's so hard is you're not there to do it, and you're not on the scene, and you're not in that person's head, and so it's kind of hard to say exactly how do you screen for this.
When I saw the video, like what was it, dash cam video, he did seem he seemed way more jumpy than he should have been.
Yeah. And wasn't that like within like a day or two of something else had just happened where they were like threatening to
there was
attack?
a guy in Gray. Who was the guy down south who got shot?
Yeah. And I remember it was around that same week that we were getting notices for EMS firefighters and cops that there was some of the Black Lives groups were saying, we're going to meet here and attack whatever safety workers, because if you're friends with the cops, you're the enemy too. And we were getting those notices too. So it is understandable if he was getting jumpy, because there was warnings going out to EMS and firefighters also to look out for people, possibly looking to start problems. And there was even a notice that went out as close as Bloomington. So that was that week all that shit was going on. So it's kind of, but which is why I'm saying it's like how do you screen for that when it's like it's their job at the same time. If you're too jumpy to be out there, you have to kind of be able to self-assess and be like, okay, I'm going to take a personal day because my head's not in it. So that's the problem. And there's times we do that too with EMS as volunteers, where it's like, hey, I just got done with whatever this call was, and I can't, I need to take a day to handle it right now because what I just saw was, a little too much for me. I need to step back a second. But they teach us that anyway in training. Is sometimes you need to know when you need to take a breather so that you don't do something that might endanger someone else, because you need to be on top of your stuff.
Okay, Jack, you got thoughts on this? Asking the rest of that guy.
Why? Is it because I'm a minority?
Yeah.
Didn't I just put a bunch of people in our place about that shit? No. Let me see if I can't get out of the wind.
I guess at this point it's less about the hack that happened, because the hack was kind of pointless. It was kind of like, one thing that's very little to do with it, despite what the hacker actually wants to claim. But
my feelings about it is, well, I mean, it's mixed. I mean, it's even for example here in Kentucky, if you conceal carry, you really don't really in some areas they would like you to announce that, hey, you got something on you, and then others they just don't give a shit. I mean, I was pulled over in Mall Draw and I was carrying. The guy didn't give two fucks if I was or not. It was just a simple speeding ticket. Whereas here in my local city, Shoudley, I have to announce that I carry. So given his situation, yeah, he kind of did the right thing, but then he didn't in my opinion, the officer didn't give it a chance to try to de-escalate potentially volatile situation. And Fernando, for all well intentions, I mean, it just popped off that quick. There was no way to try to calm the situation down. It was just, from a simple parking light issue to brake light issue to
apparently also what Philando apparently to him appeared like someone who was recently described on the radio as being involved with like an armed robbery.
What the fuck ever. There's always that motherfucker. Yeah. There's always that motherfucking excuse. You fit the description of somebody.
Yeah, I think I would have been a lot more calm once I saw there was a kid and a woman in the car. I've been like, this is probably not the armed robber I'm looking for. Granted, there are psychos who go around like that maybe, but I would have been like, okay, check it out. Citation for the broken light and then be done with it. Then again, I'm never in that situation, so what do I know what I'd be like? But at the same time, the cop seemed like way too hyped. Also, I'm seeing people on Twitter make this thing about white supremacy. It was a Hispanic cop who shot him.
No, I mean, I wouldn't naturally assume somebody's a racist asshole. I mean, I've come across them, but
it was an ill-prepared cop who probably really wasn't suited for that particular job.
Right. But I mean, the only way you can get experience is to actually do it, and the only way to actually do it is to actually do it.
Here, I guess you don't know if you're cut out for it until you do it for a while. Unless you like your police force hires only like former military or someone who's been in shit before that's stressful situation.
Well, a lot of them do, but then they also, because they're so short staffed, they'll take whoever comes out of high school,
or whoever doesn't have a criminal record, or
Yeah, I heard someone talk about a police office that would not take cops over a certain intelligence level.
What?
Yeah, I've heard. Let me see if I can find this damn story.
Yeah, that was also with firefighters as well.
That's unfortunate because you'd think that Well, what's sad is I understand why, but it's still stupid and unfortunate.
This is an old ass story. This is like 2000 shit. This is New London. Court okays barring high IQs for cops. This seems like more of an anecdotal one-off thing, though, maybe. Because court rules to be too smart to be a cop. All right, this was more recent. This is December 2014. Robert Jordan, a 49-year-old college graduate, scored 33 on an intelligence test he took as part of the application process to become a police officer in a town of New London, Connecticut. The score meant Jordan had an IQ of 125. The average score for a police officer was 21 to 22, or an IQ of 104. New London would only interview candidates who scored between 20 and 27. And apparently Jordan sued, alleging discrimination, but the Second U.S. Court Appeals in New York upheld that it wasn't discriminatory. Why, you might ask? Because New London Department applied the same standard to everyone who applied.
To everybody.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Ultimately, I understand why they're doing it, and it's very simple. The issue is police departments don't have a lot of money to train people. For instance, I was offered a jailer position here in Georgia, which I thought was amusing. I definitely volunteered just to do it part-time just because I like to contribute, and I come from a long line of law enforcement. Plus, it would get me badged, which gives me access to a lot of interesting forensic stuff. But that aside from the point, the concern is for me, the processing time, the full-blown processing time from being deputized to being fully in processed, vetted, and trained to be able to start processing as a jailer was 2 weeks. 2 weeks.
Ouch.
Yeah. So obviously they don't really have the money to do long-term training, obviously, or they would give me a much longer training time. Now, with that being said, what that tells me right out the door is they're not well funded, which if you know anybody in law enforcement or have done any form of tech support in law enforcement like I have, you would know that that is the reality. They're not well supported, they're not well financed, they're not well funded, and the worst part is most of them aren't well paid. And the issue is if you've got a bunch of individuals that are highly intelligent, most likely what they are going to do is they're going to go find something better. And that's a natural migration for the average person, is they're going to go find something better. And when they go and find that something better, they're going to leave, which is an obvious conclusion. What the deputies are trying to do there and what the officers are trying to do there is they're trying to avoid that issue in the first place, which is actually pretty intelligent. And that's specifically because they're targeting individuals that are of lower intelligence, not to say that they're intellectually incapable, but those that are of a lower intelligence level than someone of a higher performance are less likely to move forward in life in terms of a higher career. They're going to stay at the job that they find that they're comfortable with that pays them modestly to moderately well. They're not going to go out and say, I'm going to go become a brain surgeon tomorrow because I can. They're going to go say, college is hard. I'm going to spend 5 years in college and I have no guarantees of getting a job. I'm going to take the safer bet and just stay here with the law enforcement and come become a detective and make 50 or 60 after 5 or 6 years, maybe 10 if I'm lucky. And then they're going to go detective, or they're going to transfer to the state police, and they're going to move into some other formal position inside of the agency there. But the ideology behind it is you want to keep your costs as low as possible, and the easiest way to do that is to simply cut your attrition rate. And by cutting your attrition rate, you can control that by targeting individuals that are less likely to leave, i.e. lower level intellectuals.
The justification, apparently, I think the department gave was, I'm looking at this ABC News article, those who scored too high could get bored with police work and leave soon after undergoing costly training.
Yeah. So I hit it down the head.
Point, at the same time, it just seems stupid to... it seems like intuitively, it seems like a bad idea to cut out the smart people, you know?
Yeah, because I mean, there's like those like us that, you know, because in Indiana you can do auxiliary. So you can be a volunteer cop in Indiana.
Yeah. The issue is most places you can't be auxiliary. Like here in Georgia, that was one of the first things that I asked is they needed somebody full-time at nights, and I told them I can't do that, but I'll be auxiliary. And they told me they don't have an auxiliary force here.
Which is, so I think, and I do think on the plus side with Indiana is I think we actually want people trained. Like for fire, we get free fire classes. And you actually have an almost free path to go straight up almost to paramedic level, if you know what you're doing here. So we paid for EMT, but our department comped it because we signed on for 2 years with the cert. And so they go, if you sign on that you'll be volunteered for at least minimum 2 years, we'll cover your EMT. And so that's how we do that. And then we went on, and it's free hazmat tech training in Indiana. So you can have a hazmat tech cert level, state certified, and if you want to, you can use that to go into like, you know, inspection or, you know, factory or whatever that needs that wants a tech level, and that's usable in the real world. And but the way Indiana does it is like, okay, cool, we'll train you and we'll get you certed. And also there's a lot more involved here before you're supposed to go into a house. Like you're supposed to have firefighter 1, your mandatory, which is your modules A and B, before you go into a house fire, and that teaches you Adrian's weekly chat. So so we get our module A, B taken care of, and that's our mandatory. and that teaches you all the ground rules for fire, all your NIMS. You have to have your NIMS certification, NIMS 100, 200, and 800, 1278, I think. And then, and so you have all that under your belt, and so we have like a list of certs that, you know, we got, and that's free through the state, or that's free through TEEX, or it's free through whatever, and you can still use that. But that's the way Indiana does it. And then we have the option, Monroe County and I think Lawrence County and a couple other places, to do auxiliary. But they also want you to do fire school if you want to go full time. So it just depends on your departments in your area. But you have all these resources here. So there's a lot that we can work with.
I'm trying to think of what I want to do career-wise long term. Don't have quite enough money yet to actually retire. All right, next thing in the show notes. Let's see what we got. Last week in YouTube live chat, a person asked if the CEH, Certified Ethical Hacker, was a good start to getting an InfoSec. Okay, first of all, let me admit a slight conflict I have here. I am helping EC Council out a little bit on speaker selection for Hacker Halted, which I think is happening in Atlanta. That said, CEH, EC Council, the reaction to getting hacked twice within like a short amount of time, what was it, 2 years ago? Was piss poor. And like the photo of Snowden who got released, supposedly came from their certification database. I never saw an exact explanation for what that was. If it was real, not real, it was just kind of swept under the rug. So I'm understanding there are all certain agencies that still want that particular certification to be in place. But I know it's not held in as high esteem as the OSCP?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I have my opinions. I saw it between taking breaks here, going outside for a cigarette and watching from the live stream. I have my opinions, and he asked a question, and I tried to see if he was still around when I saw it, but he was gone by then, so I figured that I would squeeze it in.
All right. Let's do this. Okay. So, first and foremost, if you're looking at a certification to get into InfoSec, you're already wrong. You're already terribly wrong. Because first and foremost, the biggest issue in InfoSec right now in the industry, from an educator's perspective, from an architect's perspective, from a principal engineering perspective, and from a business owner's perspective, is InfoSec is not a quote-unquote entry-level job. The best way to describe InfoSec as a whole, you have to assess the entire industry. And the easiest way to compare everything is with Dungeons and Dragons.
Oh, hell.
Oh, yeah. So,
lay it on us. Preach!
I love you! You're my new best friend. Okay, please go.
Preach!
So, the issue here is everybody looks at InfoSec like it's a level 1 wizard class, which is wrong. It's terribly, terribly wrong. When you're looking at InfoSec, you're looking at IT. And when you're looking at IT itself is the wizard class. And you're either a wizard or you're a sorcerer, Harry. And you're either rolling with Merlin or you're fucking Harry Potter. And that's just what you are. And either you're coming in guns blazing because you're just a natural god and you come from this family that has just been doing InfoSec for forever, or you're going to have to start at the basic spells of learning how to lift something with levitation. And you're going to start at level 1, and that's Help Desk. And Help Desk is an incredibly important stepping stone to everybody's career. And I say this because I've run into people who couldn't configure their own printer, and they're sitting in lead positions. And they're great at what they do, but they can't expand beyond that area because they don't have the expertise to understand the basic principles. My favorite thing to do to people is to walk up to a security person and hand them a very generic string of text. And they look at it like it's gibberish, and I immediately know they're not worth my time. And I end the interview there because the string is an SNMP v2 string. And if you can't even tell what that is, you obviously haven't had the networking background that's required to understand the network protocols that you're going to be looking at for the packets when you're putting eyes to glass, which means you're not able to process the network analysis process that you need to be able to conduct successfully in order to actually be a successful information assurance analyst, which is what's needed for generic SOC work. So I immediately know you're not qualified to do this job because you don't understand something as generic as SNMP. And if you don't know SNMP, I don't expect you to be able to comprehend a Kerberos token exchange. And if you can't understand that, I don't expect you to be able to process anything that's authenticated. And if you can't understand that, encryption just went right out the door because it doesn't matter if you can identify that an encryption exchange just occurred. You don't know what it's for because you can't identify the most basic of principles. And so you aren't ready for this job because you're not qualified for this job. And I branch it out. So you're starting with 2 different caster classes. On the offensive magics, you've got wizards and sorcerers. On the healing classes, you've got clerics. Networking is a lot like being a wizard and a cleric. And you branch off into that area. Then you've got server admins, which are just straight up wizards. Then you've got my favorite, which are systems guys, which are wizards and clerics together, which is just magical. And then you keep going up this food chain. And as you keep going up further into networking, you just keep adding more cleric classes. It never changes. It's just better magic all the way up until you can revive the entire network and you're just a god. Welcome to magic. All right. And then you go over to the other side of the fence here where you've got systems, where you're just adding more wizard classes. No big deal. No big deal. Just until you're able to cast just meteorites and rain clusters from the sky, and you're just pouring servers everywhere, and it's magical. And then you have the systems guys, where it requires an incredibly strong amount of information, an incredibly strong amount of discipline, because you have to understand both environments very clearly in order to be able to do the job effectively. You have to understand both the system, the actual servers, and you have to understand the network, the environment. You have to understand how they talk to each other, not that servers, I plug it into a switch, it works, it's magic. No, you have to configure it to do that. You can control, I can make it to where I can make server 1 perform 3 times faster than server 2 and 3 by just changing generic networking configurations and then applying additional ports. And it's very simple stuff on the back end if you understand the principles behind it, but most people simply don't. And so then we take this to the next extreme of saying, okay, well, I don't want to just be a systems engineer. I want to do security, or I want to do OpenStack. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Now we're getting into the fun stuff. All right, you want to be an OpenStack engineer. Well, welcome to the Archmage class. Oh, yeah. Now we're popping on prestige classes. Well, in order to be an effective OpenStack engineer, you have to have an incredibly strong systems background, and you have to have an incredibly strong networking background. So you have to pop over into the Mystic Thruge class as well. So now you have 2 prestige classes that you're carrying. So you have to be a minimum of a level, I think it's 11 wizard, and a minimum of a level 7 cleric, so you can pick up 1 in each, just so you can be a baseline principal engineer and a baseline OpenStack engineer to collectively be able to do the job of an OpenStack engineer, because you have to understand SDN, standard physical networking, you have to understand security, you have to understand how the networks are interlocked together. You have to understand the systems behind it. You have to have a strong Linux background. You have to have a strong SDN background and virtual networking and switching background. You have to understand failover and how to do VRRP and MPLS if you're doing any kind of sophisticated cloud design. You have to understand storage. And on top of all of that, you need to at least know 3 programming languages, preferably Python, C#, and some kind of large-end back-end system language, preferably Node.js in today's times. And that's just to be a generic, semi-functional OpenStack engineer. Now, to flip that on the reciprocal, if you decided I'm not going to go be an OpenStack engineer because I'm not insane and I don't want to play this campaign to level 20, well, then I'm going to go be a security guy instead. And then I only have to level up to level 15. And then in that instance, I'm just going to go straight Archmage. And then I'm just going to pour hellfire on everybody's face. Welcome to security. But you still have to have that background in order to do it. And you have to go through a lot of things. But you also still have to have the 1 level of Mystic Thruge, because you need the networking background as well. But instead of having to have 3 levels in both prestige classes, you only need 1. And that's the real difference in security, is you need the networking background because you need to understand the protocols. You need to understand how the VLANs work. You need to understand how QoS works. You need to understand how the malware can or can't route to your network and branch out, because you need to understand, hey, this started in accounting. Instead of just cutting off the entire department and then letting it spread throughout the entire building, I can just VLAN off accounting and then VLAN off the department at that building and shut off that one specific VLAN. And instead of cutting off an entire department or an entire building, I can just cut off one floor. And I can isolate it to one floor instead of one entire building. But that's an incredibly important principle to understand, and that's just a generic networking principle. When you start getting into more sophisticated layouts where you're doing multiple types of routing classes, when you're integrating BGP with EIGRP or BGP with OSPF, and you're starting to look at layer 2, layer 3 switching, and you're doing a lot of multi-link and ether channeling for bandwidth failover, as well as truncated ports for additional bandwidth throughputs, you're going to start seeing incredibly sophisticated networks. You start looking at issues like, okay, well, I need my bro machine to start performing at wire speed because it's not running fast enough. You need to understand the heavy background in systems to understand I can use PFs, I can use a PF ring, and I can turn that bad boy on to full speed by bypassing the kernel inside of Linux and letting it run through PF ring instead, so that I can get pure wire speeds and go from having a 4 gig on a 10 gig link to the full 10 gig link by bypassing kernel and bypassing all the additional security stacks on that system and turning off the layer 7 processes because I don't need them there. I just need to process wire speed and process bro. But that issue comes in to understanding the environment, and you're not going to get that if you're walking up and saying, I need the CEH. If you get your CEH, that is fantastic. It is a good certification to have if you need basic principles of something that you've already got a strong background in. And that's already having a networking background, that's already having a systems background, that's understanding the principles of Linux, that's understanding how networks work and interoperate together, how routing and switching works at a moderate level. You don't need to be able to do high-end throughput, high-end redundancy, and really robust networks, but you need to understand why they work. And then you can start looking at something like pen testing, because if you don't understand networking, you turn on an Nmap scan and you've got an ICS environment out there, you just turn on an Nmap scan and it could hit the entire environment because you just pointed it generically at a 10 network. Well, that's fantastic. You just hit the entire Class A network and just blew up my entire ICS environment, and there goes half the power plant. Fan-fucking-tastic. Thank you so much for the next 4 months of my labor. That's going to go to fixing that because you blew up the entire environment. And people laugh, but this happens all the time. And that's because people who walk in, who just pick up a CEH, who don't know what they're doing, go out and they start playing with stuff and they start blowing stuff up. And that happens all the time.
But it was on the labs.
Oh, it was on the labs, absolutely. Oh yeah, it works in the 192.168 network, absolutely. It's not going to work in a 10 dot network, which is normally every single network everywhere ever. And that's part of the issue.
No, I'll tell you about the labs because I'm currently working through stuff right now, and right now I'm pulling hair out because I'm working through the lab and doing exactly what the lab is telling me to do. And the lab don't work. So I've been debugging the lab and correcting the lab. And it's
What lab is this?
Oh, I'm in the LPIC 1 right now just for shits and giggles, but it's good to do a review.
Giggles and shits? Oh.
No, there's a lot of stuff. I have gaps because I wasn't formally trained for my first 7 years. We were just thrown in, and my boss was like, "Here, teach yourself." And so now I'm like, okay, if I'm going to actually go to get the certs, I should probably take the actual class because I know I have giant
gaps.
empty holes.
Nothing wrong with that at all. I mean, that's actually a great thing. I tell people like this, like you said with the CEH. CEH is great. It's a great foundation. It's not a bad cert. A lot of people, they frown upon it, but it gives you some kind of foundation to start. Wherever you get your foundation from, it doesn't matter. But long as you get the foundation, long as you get the basics from somewhere, whether it's a certification course or self-taught or somebody showing you. I mean, either. Go ahead.
I would totally disagree with that. And the reason behind that is very simple. Is as a certification instructor myself, the issue is certification courses are designed to teach a very limited number of items. When you look at building a certification, the first thing you do is you build a framework. And then behind that framework, normally you're working with some kind of a framework from ANSI. Normally it's an ANSI framework because they want to get it accredited for college credit purposes. And so you've got an ANSI framework. And in that framework, you have all these items that you have to cover specifically in order to cover that certification for that quote-unquote principle of what you're trying to teach. The core principles and then the advanced topics if you can. Normally you're covering the intermediates because that's all you can squeeze in there, because you don't want it to be 6,000 pages long and be the black tome like, God, what is the kid's name who made the black tome for all the VM systems? But he's missing 2, and it's still incomplete, but it's 600 pages. It's not even a joke. It's exactly 600 pages. But it's a great read. But the issue is they don't cover all the principles. They just cover all the basic actions required in order to conduct XYZ tasks. And the issue with that is that certifications take the exact same approach and a similar mindset, which is I need to achieve XYZ tasks on my task list. These are topics I need to cover. This is how I'm going to do that. But I can only cover this specific area. I've got this giant map of the world. I can only cover Bolivia.
Right. And
or Luxembourg.
What I'm saying.
Yeah, or Luxembourg. You pick a country. But the issue is I'm taking this one country, putting it on the map, and saying this person can now send me anywhere in the world with expertise because they know Bolivia. And that's the issue.
No, I agree with you on the issue. I was just saying in general, like, because some people, in the pen testing world, when somebody comes up to them and say, hey, well, I'm taking my CEH, and a lot of people frown upon it, but it's just like, you got to start somewhere. Like, if you get a free course for like a CEH, I'm not saying it's teaching you everything even related to pen testing, but it gives you some kind of start or foundation to keep continuing research.
Oh, if you're speaking in terms of getting into pen testing and actually beginning at some point from an intermediate career and moving into security into pen testing, yes, the CEH is the perfect certification for that, specifically because even people from the OSCP and SANS have said multiple occasions the SANS courses are not the ideal starter courses because they assume that you have a substantial level of beginner understanding. And if you walk in there with no background knowledge whatsoever, you're going to get annihilated by the GPen.
Right.
You're going to get absolutely annihilated by the GPen. And the OSCP, you're not even going to get there because you're not going to get through the lab. You're just going to get wrecked. You're going to get wrecked. You're not going to get the first flag.
And then also what you're saying about the paper tigers, I do agree. There's a lot of that. It's destroyed so many accreditation, like with Microsoft. Nobody has respect for Microsoft certifications because of the paper tiger syndrome. You got a lot of these MCSEs that can't even freaking install a server. They don't understand DNS.
Or configure a fucking NIC card. Oops.
Exactly.
Yeah. The issue with what I see with certifications like Microsoft is Microsoft actually has really strong certifications. They actually do have really good content. And I'm not saying that because I'm an MPN, which I'll disclose that. I'm saying that because it's actually true. I actually have, I don't know if y'all guys can't see, that's right, but I actually have Microsoft's books on their all their SQL books. I have, well, not all their SQL books. They have a shitload of books. But I have a lot of their SQL books, their Exchange book. I've got their manuals on Access. I've got their manuals on the MCSA, and I'll eventually get the MCSE for the new one when I find it. But their content is actually really good. The issue is you can learn all of the content, and that is fantabulous. You can build exactly a Microsoft environment, and you can build it exactly to what they tell you. The issue is what happens if you build in anything else. And that's the problem, is when you have an 11-year-old who has successfully passed the MCSE, which is incredibly impressive. Don't ever play that down. That's an incredibly impressive feat for a child. That's, well, I would say young man, because that's what it was. It was a young man. if you're able to successfully pass the MCSE with no industry experience whatsoever, to any real extent, obviously because they're 11, what that tells me is you don't need hands-on experience in order to master the Microsoft's certifications in order to meet their requirements to say that you are quote-unquote certified. There's a very minimal component for hands-on capacity and almost zero experience requirements. And the issue with that is, and what actually also hit the ISC Squared group, was another individual of a similar age was able to successfully pass the CISSP. And that's when they implemented the years of experience requirement after that happened, because it devastated their image. Because if a child can pass it and you're an adult and you're failing it, there's something wrong with you. That's what the image. That's what it created. And so it created this stigma to where if you don't have the years of experience, they automatically disqualify you from being able to get anything other than the CISSP. They kicked you from that. And then they realized they disqualified too many people, and that's when they made the CISSP-A for the associate until you could graduate into the CISSP full. I think it's CISSP-P if I'm not mistaken, or this is standard CISSP.
It's standard CISSP, and then it's associates of it's an ISC2 associate.
Yeah.
It's just really fucking generic because you don't know whether or not that person has passed the CISSP or whether they has passed the SSCP.
Well, the SSCP is actually a good certification. It's actually one of the few from ISC Square that I actually suggest people to get. It's actually a really good one for systems. If we're talking about the same SSCP.
Yes.
Certified System Security Certified Practitioner, I think it is.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's actually a pretty good one for systems. But with that being said, the issue is if you can walk over here and grab my 400-plus page MCSA book, sit down, memorize a shitload of content, and then pass a certification test, that's fantastic. You know Microsoft really well. And that's good because their exams are hard. The issue is what happens if I walk up to you and say, okay, that's wonderful. You passed the MCSA. Now build me a website.
And they can't do it.
And they can't do it. Now build me a Docker environment.
Like that.
And they can't do it. Or I ask you, hey, I want you to integrate DFS with my SAN solution so I have a master-slave SAN solution from my file servers.
And they can't do it.
But that's the issue is when I say systems administrator, I'm not saying somebody with 4 letters after their name, 5 letters after their name. Having an R8CSA, having an R8CE does not make you a Linux administrator. It does not make you a systems administrator or a systems engineer. Having an MCSA, MCSE does not make that. What makes you that is if I walk up to you, I say, here's 6 Dell R610s. I want you to build me a cluster of Ubuntu 16.04 LTS, and I want you to build me a cluster of 2016 Windows Server R2 pack, and you can build me both and then successfully get them to integrate with Samba over some kind of file share, preferably NFS, and then leverage DFS off of the Microsoft environment for my standard users, and then the Linux environment for God only knows what, probably some DevOps environment, preferably OpenStack. But I don't expect you to build OpenStack. I'm probably going to pay Red Hat to come in, blow away my Ubuntu box, and build me RHEL because no one can get OpenStack running after 6 months.
Well, here's the thing too, and mind you, I'm not an RACE, I never was, but I've met plenty, like you said, I've met plenty that have the certification but can't compile the freaking kernel.
Yeah, but that's what I'm saying. There's a difference between having a certification and being an engineer. There's a huge difference. Engineers can deliver on time or ahead of schedule, and they have capabilities. They have the ability to deliver. They can deliver deliverables.
Yes.
An individual that's certified normally cannot. And that's
90%, 99
brass tacks. That's the simple reality. Is having a certification for me, when I look at a resume, this is what I do when I look at a resume. I look at your name, I look at your location, and I say, oh, cool, their name is Steve. They're from Georgia. That's neat. And then I jump down bypassing everything in your resume, job titles, job descriptions, things that you've done, your certifications, your degree. I don't give a shit about any of that. I jump straight down to the bottom. What I'm looking for is extracurricular activities, because that's immediately going to tell me how good you really are. If I look at that and you haven't done any talks at a con, you're not a senior.
No, you're not.
You're not an industry leader. So I'm automatically taking you out of my management bracket because you're not good enough to be a manager for me.
No.
You're not good enough to be a project lead for me.
But here's the thing.
But I mean, I don't even give talks because I just feel that one, I don't have anything worth contributing.
You don't have to. You don't have to give a talk in order for me to consider you at that level. What I'm looking for is either you're giving talks and you're active in the industry at conferences, or you're active in a hacker space, or you're active on some project, or you're active on GitHub building out new tool sets, or you're active doing some kind of competitions or CTF, something that shows me you're actually in the industry because you love what you do. You live the lifestyle. You're not just a 9-to-5er. Because 9-to-5ers aren't passionate. They're generally not good at their job. And a lot of times, they're not competent. And those are 3 very easy indicators that you can immediately look at just by seeing what they do on the spare time. Because anybody can play buzzword bingo. I can say OpenStack, PHP, REST API, RESTful state, do SAN stuff. Yeah, I do OpenStack good, yeah. And then I can put all these words into and literally just play buzzword bingo throughout all these job descriptions and literally just I look at the job description, take that word, change 5 sentences, and bam, I pretty much just copy pasted your job description requirement into my job description for all the tasks I've ever had. That takes next to no effort whatsoever. I just have to give half a shit, and then from there, I have a completed resume.
Guys, Jeremy Robinson. Surprised there's so few watching this. However, on the topic. There are many employers who won't look at you unless you have sky-high certs, regardless if the job actually requires those certs.
And that's fine.
From personal experience, I got my jobs because I did speak out there in cons. I got known for my blog. I actually had my blog for almost 10 years, I guess, or more like 8 years before I even got a real security job. So that wasn't my personal experience. But that was apparently Jeremy's experience. What's y'all's thoughts on that? I'm reading this from the YouTube chat.
Well, no, that's just fine. If someone is looking at your resume and is saying you need certifications in order to do a job, even though it may not be required, first and foremost, I wouldn't want to work for them, and I would turn the job down. I've looked at plenty of jobs where I've seen a CISSP requirement for a SOC manager, and I've just said no. And the simple reality is because if you're a SOC manager and you're requiring a CISSP, the first thing that I ask them is, at what point are we going to be doing patch management as part of the SOC team? And they tell me you're not. And then my next question is then why do you care about compliance or information assurance as part of a SOC team? That should be part of your IAM team.
Well, I mean,
here's the thing.
Oh, go ahead.
What I was saying was, here's the thing. I don't base a job, okay, if I'm looking for a job, right? The first thing I'm looking at, screw all the credentials and everything else, I'm looking at the energy. What kind of people are actually working at this particular job? Because when I go somewhere, I'm very passionate about what I do, and I care more about the environment, the culture. So it's just more so, hey, is this a place where there's a huge turnaround, a huge turnover rate? Is this a place where people actually enjoy working at? Are we doing new technology? Are we doing anything innovative? Like, these are kind of things that I look for. I mean, everybody else has their own personal pet peeve or whatever else of why they're looking for a job. But I just wouldn't basically turn it down because they're asking for a specific certification. If it's something that I would really want to be like, hey, I don't have that certification at the moment, currently working on it, if you give me 6 months or something, of that matter. I'm just throwing that out there hypothetically.
Yeah. The issue, though, is if you're looking at an environment where they're requiring certifications that are irrelevant to the actual job, the issue is normally their level of competency is incredibly low. And what I've normally pegged those companies for is I like to call them management companies. And what they normally are is people who have gotten together collectively and just decided we're going to start a cyber defense company, or we're going to start some kind of pen testing company, or we're going to start an information assurance company. And most times they have zero background whatsoever in IT for any of the founders. And what they do is they'll go hire somebody who's relatively to moderately good. Sometimes they get really lucky and find somebody that's incredibly good. They'll pick up that person, and that person will be the person that's actually running the company. And that will be the person that ends up climbing into some kind of VP position, and a lot of times ends up being in the architect spot. that you end up working with on a lot of contracts for normally their first 5 to 10 contracts, then it eventually gets promoted as some kind of district manager or some kind of VP of engineering. And those are normally the guys that end up leaving first. And that's why when you see a lot of hostile takeovers of companies, when they're buying out the employees, the first person they go after is the architects and the VP of engineering, because those are the real talent sets. Everybody else, they're just managers. They're middlemen, and they can be eliminated with almost zero consequence whatsoever to the entire team. And that's why when you look at companies of Google, they have the engineering team and they have the support team, which the engineering team is 30 to 60 people, and then they have 10,000 people surrounding them, because those 60 engineers create the product, maintain the product, and keep the product alive. The other 10,000 people are marketers, sales guys, HR, middle managers, everything else, the soup bullets, everything, but they're everything but the product. You take the engineers away, you take the product. So you pop
That's
60
true.
people out of 10,000, you've taken the company. And that's why
true.
when we just had, what was it, with Wayo? Was it Wayo? Waco? Is suing Uber, if I'm not mistaken, because they pulled like 4 of their engineers. I think it was 4 of their engineers, if I'm not mistaken, and it pretty much just crippled the company's capabilities of building self-driving cars.
Hey,
And
speaking of which, did Uber's CEO resign already?
Yeah, he's gone.
Oh, he's gone. Okay.
Yeah, don't even get me started on Uber. They have no management. They have no leadership, which is honestly terrible. But whatever.
Oh man.
Right. I mean, for example, the position I'm in now, it's a fairly new position because they were starting to stand up this team. Well, back in 2013, just because I was bored, I fucked around and got the CISSP.
Mm-hmm.
And then I moved on to a different job, and with this job, they hired me for the express intent for this team that they were building. So yeah, I had to sit on a help desk for 6 months, but I'm now doing security work.
Yeah.
And the only reason why I'm sitting there is because I fucked around and got the CISSP. Does that make me a piss poor candidate somewhere else? Probably.
Well, for your environment and your situation, what you're doing is, I don't know your background, but you're sitting at a help desk position, which means you're at the entry level area. And then from there, you're moving into an intermediate level position. Normally it's a sysadmin, a network engineer, or a junior systems position, where people normally migrate naturally before stepping into a generic network engineer, systems admin, or systems engineer position. And then they migrate up slowly into other environments where they'll step into security, patch management from systems. So you go systems engineering, you'll go into security a lot of times. Systems administration, you'll step into some area of patch management, information assurance is what normally happens to those guys. And then you got the networking guys who never change. They just stay networking. Every once in a while, one will jump over to security. But for the most part, they hardly ever go systems unless they go systems. And if they go systems administration, they're always going Linux. I don't know why. It's just how things happen.
Because
Yeah, I was about to ask you.
No. I started out as a technician, and then I moved up to systems for a few years.
Yeah.
Before I even went back to college, I was actually in the military, configuring Cisco switches and doing all the grunt work.
So you've got networking and a systems background with a base background for help desk already. So you've already got your entry level.
Right. But then I left the job with doing the systems administrator work at Fort Knox, because eventually that job was going to get eliminated.
Yeah.
Well, I'm not gonna sit at home and starve and hope that a big job's going to come along. So
you go and get something. Yeah, and that's just survival. But you have the skill set to step into security. You have the basic background requirements. You have the systems administration background to understand the systems requirements that they have. And you have the networking background requirements that you need in order to actually be effective at assessing and understanding how the network and data flow is on the network itself. You have all the basic principles and the intermediate principles that are required to be in security. So you're on the right track, but you went after your CISSP, and so you've elected through that choice to go information assurance instead of going after something like an aggressive certification like the CEH, the OSCP, or GPIN, or going into forensics with the the CHFI and to the GCIH.
Yeah.
Right. Right.
Now,
I mean,
I have a question.
I've done a CEH, but I just let the shit lapse because I thought it was a fucking joke.
Well, a lot of people do. I mean, I let mine lapse, and I have to go
Me too.
renew mine again so I can get mine so I can instruct for the CEH V9. But it's not for everybody, honestly. If you're going to go into pen testing, you have to take the CEH to get the principles and immediately jump into the more offensive stuff, which a lot of people are doing nowadays. Which is they're hitting the CEH, they're hitting their G pen, and then after they get their G pen, they're gaining confidence, and then the lab time they go after the OSCP.
Well, prime example, like, okay, my background a little bit, right? Like I said, I started off as a PC tech,
Okay.
and then I became system/network administrator. I worked in an education environment at a university.
Okay. That's actually a really good environment.
So I did Cisco. I did the PIX 515. And this how old, these old stuff, but I did the PIX 515. I did VPN. I did Cisco router 2600s, 3550s.
Hey, don't diss the 3550s. I've actually got 3 of those still laying around.
Yeah. So I understand networking to a T.
Yeah, which is great.
My stronger point was actually I became a sysadmin. When I became a sysadmin, I used to have a thing called kernel junkies. It was me and a couple other guys who used to call ourselves kernel junkies.
Okay.
We just wanted
Linux.
to learn. Not even just Linux. Novell, because Novell had a little bit of Linux in it. Yeah, I was a Novell.
So you're a
admin.
masochist.
Dude, I was a Novell admin from 3.12 all the way to 6.5.
You might as well go install FreeBSD and Solaris and just start cutting yourself.
I did those too, man. So my Twitter name is BSD Bandit for a reason. But yeah, that's where that comes from. That's the only reason I even got into Macs was because of the FreeBSD culture. I didn't care nothing about Apple. Only thing I liked the fact that it had the BSD TCP/IP stack, and I was like, oh shit, I can rock with this. And it used the porch tree, so I was like, okay, I'm familiar with this. I can rock with it. That's the only reason I even got into Mac. I just started using Macs back in 2008. Before that, I didn't care anything about that. I didn't care about the Steve Jobs debacle. I couldn't stand Steve Jobs. I thought that he was just a person masquerading as someone that knew what he was talking about. I'm sorry. That's just my personal opinion. Hope there's no Steve Jobs fans here. I don't mean to offend you. But in general, I did that. I went and got the Linux Plus, the LPIC 1 and 2.
Triggered.
Huh?
I'm triggered.
I got the LPIC 1 and 2.
Yeah.
I have the CEH. I have the OSWP because I was interested in wireless.
Wireless. Yeah.
Yeah, I was interested in wireless. Matter of fact, Michael Osmond, Michael Osmond and Zero Chaos really got me into wireless.
Yeah. If you really want to go down the wireless rabbit hole, this may be a little off the beaten path, but there's a company called Route 9B, and they actually have a really, really good wireless course. I would highly recommend it.
Route 9B.
If you really want to go way down the rabbit hole of wireless, they have a really good wireless course. But the kid gloves come off, to say the least. I know a lot of the guys over there, they're not so much into holding hands. They will deliver you the content that they promised. It is incredibly high quality content. It is not easy, nor is it meant to be easy, but it is incredibly effective. Yeah. It is incredibly effective. And I would say if it were applied in real industry environments, it would work incredibly well. And it's very easy to migrate from the classroom environment to a production from their class. That's all I'm going to say about that one.
Yeah. Well, and here's how I got good with wireless. My first book I read, and I recommend this to anyone, the 802.11 Networks O'Reilly book. I read that twice. That gave me a base foundation of how wireless works and how the packets look and what to look for when I'm doing any type of scanning or sniffing. Okay. Then from there, I started buying shit tons of antennas, and of course Googling around to see if there were any wireless hackers out there. I got on the IRC channels. That's how I met Zero Chaos.
Yeah,
if you want Rick.
If you want to have a lot of good times for a book-wise, there's the Hacker's Handbook to Wireless Exploitation is actually a really good manual as well. It's actually one of the few series that I own almost every single book title for.
Mm-hmm. Here's the thing, and maybe I'm looking at this wrong. When I'm trying to learn the subject, like, okay, for example, with web, right? They have the Web Application Hacker's Handbook, and that's a great book, right?
Yeah, I've got it.
And what I'm finding out is, like, it's great as a reference.
Yeah.
But to really, if you really want to hack web and that's where I'm at now.
Install DDWRT and start banging on it.
That, but also too.
And get an alpha card.
Not even that. Also too, really learn the protocol. Like, if you're hacking web, learn as much as you can about HTTP, the protocol itself. Learn as much as you can about SSL. Like, different pieces of it. You see what I'm getting at?
Yeah, you're understanding the principles behind why the system works, which stems from a systems engineering background.
Right.
And that's why it's so important, is if you're working with a system, that's why the systems engineering background is so important, because systems engineers understand why the system works. For me, I understand why the database works. I know why the firewall works. I know why the network works, because I've had to work on them. I've had to build them. I've had to fix them. And so when I start to look at it from a security perspective, I know what's going to break it, and I know where to poke, because I know why it works. And because I know why it works, I know where all of its critical failure points are. And I can start poking around there, because where anything complex or complicated is more than, sorry for my bad grammar there, but anytime there's anything complicated in any instance at any given time, it's very, very likely to be vulnerable. And that's just simply because complex things are fragile and they very easily break. And that's just a simple reality for anything in life. Everything from high-end electronics to sophisticated systems with multiple intakes and multiple outputs. It's just sophisticated systems are susceptible to tampering. And anything that can be tampered with can be effectively hacked. And understanding why it works, you can understand where the weak points are going to be, or where the weaker points are more likely to be. And then from that, you can immediately start attacking those points. And that's how, when I migrated into exploitation development, it was very easy for me to do, because I already knew where to poke. I just needed to know how to poke it. And exploitation dev showed me how to poke stuff with Python. And then from there, I just ran wild.
Like prime example, and I'll say this. Like, I've run into a number of pen testers that don't really understand SQL injection. And what I mean by that is this. Like, anybody could put characters in a box or whatever and see what happens and blindly just throw things out of database. But the thing is, what do you really understand how the particular web app works? For example, anytime you're actually, especially like with PHP, say, for example, you're submitting your username and password. When you submit your username and password, it's actually generating a query for the database.
Yeah.
You know, but you'd be surprised how many people don't understand that basic concept. They're just like, okay, let me just put in a single quote. If it doesn't bring back an error, then it's not vulnerable to SQL injection. Then that's not necessarily true.
Yeah.
You have to actually see what the web app actually does. Does it redirect you to a page? Does it do something else different? Does a new page come up? I mean, there's different things to look for, not just for one generic thing. And I think we're running into a lot of situations here when you run into some security folks to where they're just looking for that one generic thing. And if they don't see it, right?
They don't see 1 = 1, they automatically think it's not susceptible, and they keep moving, which is never the case. Yeah,
exactly.
Because the first thing I do is I try 1 = 1. I see if it doesn't work. If it doesn't work, the next thing I try is an encoded 1 = 1. And then if that doesn't work, I try multiple forms of encoding in the same string and then see if that works, because the system may process one type of encoding, but it doesn't mean it's going to be able to effectively process both types of encoding or 3 types of encoding at the same time. And then I try multiple types of combinations, and if one of those works, which a lot of times it does, I now know that it's just input sanitizations from certain types of encodings and certain types of sequences of encoding. So if I mix those together in the proper forms, I can actually still hit a box and still pop it with SQL injection as long as they don't have all the proper sanitizations effectively assessed for the environment and for that specific SQL database. So say, for instance, if the SQL database processes 18 types of encodings and you only put input validations for 6 of them, I've got 12 more that I can bang you in the face with. And I've just got to figure out what 12 they are.
And then if I get desperate, I'll try other languages.
The funniest thing I ever did with a database, I shit you not, I was looking at it, and I was like, this is a weird database. It was a SQL database, and this was on a pen test of mine that I was doing. I'm not going to say what organization. It was a college. And I was looking at it, and I was like, you know, this thing looks funny. Let's give it some weird stuff. I know we're just banging on it with SQL. Let's see what happens if we combine SQL with a generic command. Let's see if we can get a command shell. And I fed it both with a buddy of mine. So we gave it the SQL injection first, and we leveraged the SQL injection to call the command shell. And it popped the shell. We had shell. And then so what I realized the second we popped shell with the print output is like, okay, well, if I can pop shell, I can feed it commands. So the first thing I did was I had it copy the entire directory. The entire it was an E directory at that time. So we copied the entire E directory and we dumped it into the web server. And then we just navigated to that web server's page. We pulled down all of the hashes, pulled all the hashes out of that, and then we brute forced every single hash. And we had every single password for every single person in that entire domain. So when we turned in our pen test report, we gave everybody sitting at the table their credential. But it's not just understanding, okay, is it susceptible to SQL injection? Is, okay, well, I'm looking at this environment. I know just by generic information from what I'm seeing here, they're most likely running a Windows environment. So that gives me 4 different servers I can look at, 2K3, 2K8, 2K12, 2K16. Okay, well, I hope it's not 2K16 because life's going to get hard if it is. I'm going to start looking at the web app because it's unlikely I'm going to pop 2K16 without a substantial amount of effort. And I ain't got that time. Ain't nobody got time for that. So what I'm going to start looking at is, all right, is it 2K3, 2K8, or 2K12? I immediately start looking at their job descriptions because the job description is going to tell me right out the door. I do it every time. It gives it to me every time. It's never failed to this day. Since day one, always. They've always got it out there. Recruiters have zero OPSEC information or knowledge or practice whatsoever. They will tell you everything. Hey, Steve, I was looking at this job description. I can't tell what kind of Windows server you're running. Are you running, is it a 2K12 environment? Can you find out for me? Because I only have experience in 2K3 and 2K8. I don't want to waste your time. First thing he's going to do is call the sysadmins that he knows or the manager for that department and be like, hey, what kind of servers are you running? We've got a candidate for a potential job. And I don't want to waste my time trying to hire this guy if he doesn't have the right environment. And he's going to tell him what environments they're running. And he's going to call back and either send me an email, which is fantastic because then I can then reference it and grep it. Or he's going to call me, which is even better because then I'm going to sit there and eat my popcorn and laugh to myself while he tells me what his environment's running. And then from that, I'm going to pull up every single environment that I can think of, environmental that I can think of for that environment for 2K12, for every exploit that's out there. And I'm going to cherry pick which one I'm going to use. And then from what he told me and from what I can see on those job descriptions, I'm going to know whether they're running either IIS native or they're trying to do something else creative with their web environment. And I'm going to be like, okay, well, I can pop their web applications as well and potentially get databases in addition to servers, or I'm just going to be able to get a server. And hopefully it's not an RODC so I can do a lot more with it. And then hopefully they don't have the proper layouts done so that I can navigate within the entire environment. And a lot of times, it's a server tied to a database, and that database is on the same intranet as everything else. I pop that server, I pop the database, I pop the entire internal network, and it happens every time like clockwork. And that's because people aren't putting out RODCs with RODBs, is what I call them, which is read-only databases. So they're slave databases that are master-slave replicated from the internal intranet database, and then once you replicate it, you shut the access off so they can't get back to the master. And on top of the master, you lock the tables so the tables can't be modified. It's a very basic security practice if you understand databases and understand security, and a lot of people simply don't do it. And that's the first thing that I'm implementing in my OpenStack environment is I'm locking the databases and I'm hiding my master database because I don't want you little monsters clawing at my baby.
Yum, 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 yum.
Because I know somebody's gonna do it. I know somebody's gonna do it. The first thing I'm doing is locking that sumbitch up.
All right,
You ain't ever gonna get it. Ever gonna get it. And
Did
so
somebody say they already have shell?
It's just me. I'm being a smartass.
being an asshole.
Bill.
Trust me, I'll see it. I'll see it. I'll eat you. I promise. That's
Bill?
why it's going through the European Gateway.
Did you get to see my talk of frogs, flags, and 4chan?
Yeah,
Versus weaponized autism.
I'm going to steal it for my paper, my academic paper.
Oh, have fun with it. I wish the
I'm kidding you.
Con.
No. There was some good. There were some insights I didn't have, quite frankly.
Yeah, I wish the Circle City Con I hadn't fucked up the last part of it because I accidentally hit mute on the mic when I was turning down the microphone to listen to the PC speakers out of my laptop.
I saw one of the versions. I can't remember.
TommyCon,
Which
hopefully.
one?
TommyCon was the full one. I didn't fuck it up.
I think it was pretty good.
Oh, cool. Thank you. I need to expand it out because after questions, it still only came to 40 minutes.
Yeah.
So I need to add some more stories. Like one more story would probably be enough to get to that 50-minute mark that I want to aim for.
Well, Secure WV's coming up.
That might very well be the next place I give it at and make it slightly expanded.
What you can do, Adrian, to burn time is you can put multiple instances of questions inside of your talks, because what ends up happening a lot of talk times, and why experienced people like Doug Burke, I love Doug, incredible guy. One of the things that Doug does that shows he's an experienced speaker is he'll have multiple question phases, because what ends up happening is if you sit through a talk and you burn through 45 minutes of talking and you have a 15-minute time frame for questions, most of the questions that you wanted to ask as an audience member, you've forgotten most of your questions after that time frame. And it just happens. It happens to me all the time. And so what it happens for experienced speakers is they'll inject about 3 or 4 question phases that you can stop. They'll pause, they'll add a 5-minute question phase, they'll add 2 or 3 questions in there, they'll go to the next set of topics, 2 or 3 questions, next set of topics, 2 or 3 questions, and then they'll have their final question block. It won't be as long, so instead of 10, 20 minutes, it might be 7 to 10. But they'll have multiple sets in there, and what each of those others will do is each of those will take about 10 minutes apiece, 5 to 10 minutes apiece, and so they're actually getting in about 30 minutes of questions, but you don't realize it because it feels like they've been talking the entire time, and that's just by structuring your talk more sparsely, I guess, instead of just hitting people with massive amounts of heavy content, any questions, where I then pull the water hose out of your mouth and turn off the fire hydrant. It's I spray you with the water hose the entire time. I stop spraying for a few minutes and then spray you some more, kind of like Major Pain. But you get the idea. And it's actually incredibly effective at taking a 30-minute talk and turning it into an hour-long one.
I might do that, especially since something's broken up very much by this particular 4chan incident. But I'm glad to hear that Bill's going to use it in some of his research.
That's why I also lecture in class, because I'm really kind of boring and there's not a lot of meat. So I'm just kidding.
I need to do more research too on the part where I was talking about 4chan bombing ISIS.
Yeah.
Because a lot of that is kind of nebulous on what exactly happened, point for point.
Yeah, I try to tend to stay away from stuff like that. I don't want to be wrapped in with extremism.
I wade right into it. I teach about trolling and hacking trolling and activism in my classes. We actually talked to Weave, and we actually talked to Sabu. We've done Skype chats with them. Hey Logan, what is the deal here with University of Charleston event?
I was going to ask you about that if you'll be attending. That event is
when it is.
Yeah, I'll give you. It's in October. I've actually got that one, and I've got Pensacola, the University of Florida, Pensacola.
I would like to try to attend if you. I hit you up on Twitter.
Yeah, that one, if I'm not mistaken, is an online event. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I'm actually going to go pretty in depth into some very intimate details of my beginning career as a interesting young man in the InfoSec community.
I live about 40 minutes away from University of Charleston.
Okay. Well, it's going to be online if I'm not mistaken. I'll check just to verify.
Is Irongeek going to cover it?
Yeah, Irongeek, are you going to cover it?
Not to my knowledge. The only thing I do in West Virginia is pretty much HackerCon and AID.
Well, it's going to be online, so you should be able to. The answer is yes, sir. You will be covering it now. No.
Man, I just don't, and this is just me saying, you guys inspire me to do so much. This is what keeps me going, honestly.
You should always go for it. The first thing I learned way early on in my career, you miss 100% of the shots you don't take, and every door you don't walk through is automatically closed.
Shit's true.
So, I mean, I'm incredibly happy with the current work that I'm doing now, but I'll still sit down and I'll talk to somebody about a position that they have open just to see what it is, to see what's going on. I just learned that CSC fused with HP's security group to create a new company called DXC. I didn't even know they existed until after I found out that. And it's actually convenient that I took the call, because then not even 2 days later, I got reference to somebody at DXC, specifically because of one of my other projects that I'm running from another interesting organization who referenced me to them because that organization does work at that federal agency.
Yeah, that actually wasn't HP. That was Hewlett Packard Enterprise. HP split into HP Inc. and HPE.
Oh, okay.
HPE. I mean, that was the 15 dot and 16 dot that I worked for, before they split.
Okay.
And it was actually the entire enterprise services division of Hewlett Packard Enterprises that they called a spin merge. Hewlett Packard Enterprises took their enterprise services section of the company and merged that with the company that was formerly CSC.
Yeah.
And they created the new company DXC out of that.
DXC, which is based on a formula. The name is not an acronym; it's a formula, which I'm still trying to find out what that is.
Yeah, well, when I was there, they were referring to it as Nuco because it wasn't DXC yet, but
Nuco,
Nuco, just for Nuco.
Oh, Nuco. Okay,
they didn't even have the name of it yet.
That's pretty awesome. They should have stayed that way, because I thought you said Nuco, and I was like, yeah, they're getting into an interesting business for sure now. Columbia.
Yeah. So it wasn't just the security; it was their entire enterprise services. From their data center offerings, their OpenStack offerings, just everything that they offered to enterprise customers. Whereas the remaining portion of the company that kept part of the HP name, I guess they're selling servers. I don't really. I mean, it was hard to figure out what the hell we even did when I was still there, because they kept cutting off. I mean, there were 330,000 employees globally when I started with them. By the time I left, I mean, they're split into 3, 4, 5 different companies, and different divisions were bought off and sold off, and merges here and there. And I think the biggest chunk was, probably less than 100,000 people at that point.
Yeah.
Right.
Honestly, I hate to say this, but it seems like it's coming true, and it's something I've been watching for quite some time, but it looks like a lot of the behemoths are dissolving. And it's just simply because I think what ended up happening is nowadays technology is almost what I would say become a commoditized environment. The entire industry is almost completely commoditized, with the exception of incredibly high-end stuff.
Yeah, I see where you're going with it. I'm sure that's part of it. From my perspective, the biggest thing was it wasn't about. It didn't really have anything to do with the company's products or the company's services or what they're offering. They're the large public companies. Their only obligations to their shareholders. And there a lot of the moves and manipulations they did with the acquisitions and the splits and the selling, it was all just to move figures around on paper, because they ran out of market they could expand to. They couldn't get any more market share, or it wasn't cost effective to go after more market share in different areas. So
just buy Dell.
They couldn't show, couldn't show growth anymore, but they could still make numbers look good if they spin everything here and there. And there were some huge things that they were able to cover up under the cover of doing these splits. I mean, like there's one very major operational event that was a 9-figure loss. I mean, it was.
Was that their cloud attempt? Because it didn't go very well.
No, this is well, yeah. Don't get me started on their cloud. No,
I'll give them a B for effort.
Yeah. I give them much less than that. No, it was actually their tier 1 storage in their core data centers. I mean, the most highly available storage they have, that they're absolute mission critical, the most important data they have. The platforms that they were running it on, about 20% of the hardware was on an older model of storage array, and for reasons they never did figure out,
GG.
They flat out lost all the data. Not, I mean,
well, I can tell you exactly what happened. I know exactly what happened. What they ended up happening is they had a cascading controller failure. Is exactly what happened. And the issue, that's my bet, my first bet out the door.
No, I mean, they were reasonably resilient systems, and they had site to site and everything. But I mean, it wasn't. These were very much segmented. And they had good data segmentation. My bet is actually more on the operating system that was running the controllers. Well, I guess it could come into a controller failure that way. But these multi-million-dollar arrays were actually running Windows XP as a management system internally in the hardware.
Are you fucking kidding?
No.
What are they running? Synology NAS or something? Are they insane?
No. These were HP branded. And this is their 12,000 series, SAN arrays, which at one time were their top of the line.
Not too bad.
Yeah. I mean, they're a very old model now.
Yeah, well, they aged. That's the issue. Is like I said, that's why I think it was a cascading controller failure. Is the issue is when you have one controller go bad and you have an environment that large, it just causes cascading issues because a lot of the controllers are daisy chained. So if one controller goes down, the other controllers experience issues because of the previous controller. And if you're not watching that like a hawk, or you have an incredibly large environment like 80 would, you're not going to notice that unless you have a lot of SNMP technology in place and a lot of health checks in place to monitor all of that. And the second one goes, the next is going to go, the next is going to go, the next is going to go, and you're going to end up with another EC2 on your hands.
These weren't actually daisy chained, at all per se. I mean, they were several separate arrays, configured their site to site, and they're even in different geographical locations.
Well, yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Systems. However,
they're all old, and that's the issue.
And in this over this like 2-week period, they just all
started to die.
Yeah. And they didn't have any connection from hardware.
Most likely.
They're running completely separate. I mean, these are like separate mission critical apps at completely different sites. The only commonality was the model of hardware that the storage part was on. There was no interaction between them, and they just started dropping. But anyway, I mean, that was like well over $1 billion, hard loss, and all on paper. I mean, that just got swept up and kind of absorbed in through multiple company splits, and by the time the markets, by the time those losses appear on the paper to the shareholders, by the time it shows up, there's going to be too much time has passed. Nobody can even backtrack it, and especially when some of the information's at one company and some went to another company. I mean, they basically just burned the paper trail by doing that.
Yeah, well, they didn't burn the paper trail. You shouldn't use the words "burn the paper trail." That would be illegal. What they did is they segregated the losses based on the corporate splits, and they kept splitting and splitting and splitting and splitting and splitting. It's like taking a piece of cake. If I take one large piece of chocolate cake and then I slice it up into 300 pieces, do I have a chocolate cake or do I have a piece of cake?
Yeah, and a lot of the moves they were doing, not just from that loss, but just the way the the corporate officers were running the company. They were adopting an awful lot of the policies that were aggressive actions that will make the short-term numbers look better, and they're going to kill you long-term.
Yeah. And a lot of times those decisions are made because executives that are making those decisions normally don't have long-term goals of the company. They're coming in to make it look good for the short term so that they can take that, flip it around in 2 to 3 years when they exit and then go to another corporation, leveraging that performance gain as a means to acquire that next position.
Yeah. I mean, I was with them through about 3 or 4 CEOs.
Not surprised.
And that's kind of the way it was for the first couple. Well, the first one without a doubt, and then the next one, well, actually he didn't last too long, but the last one, I wouldn't. It almost seems like it was by design to. Yeah, because I mean, you don't take a Fortune 20 company and split it in two in 6 months. I mean, this is something that takes an awful lot of planning. Yeah, it's almost as if this was a lot of this whole scheme of splitting up the companies and doing this and that. It's almost like it was. I don't know if it was intended from day one, but it was definitely intended several years before it happened.
Yeah.
Well,
most likely what they did, and honestly I agree with their decision, is what they realized early on is the same thing I realized for companies like EMC, which I'm expecting to burst at any time now, which is the simple reality of when you have a corporation supporting a multi-billion-dollar overhead, you have to increase your markup to be able to compete. The issue is when you're someone like EMC and then someone like Pure Storage shows up, and Pure has a product that's of equal or potentially greater performance value than yours, but their price is 30% better because they don't have the additional $4 billion to pay for, the product that I'm going to buy is Pure Storage. Simply because it seems newer, it seems better, they're less expensive, and the it's younger, so it's nicer to me, honestly. Younger companies are more friendly and more open towards customers and more engaging and more wooing of their customer base because they have to. Whereas where you have a larger infrastructure like HP or EMC with the over corporate conglomerate, it's very unlikely that you're going to have that personalized relationship because each manager is dealing with a large number of accounts unless you're a really high value dollar account, in which case that guy is too terrified to do anything other than very generic, very stapled, very quid pro quo. This is it. This is the relationship. I'm going to shake your hand, have a cigar with you every once in a blue moon. I'm going to call you, hey man, how you doing? But it's not personalized where like my relationship with Red Hat. I just had a beer with the Army guy from Red Hat. Incredible guy. Wonderful. Loved on. Wonderful guy. Fantastic. I definitely consider him a friend of mine. But they also are there to sell products. But because I have that personalized relationship, it doesn't feel that way. And it lowers my guard as an engineer, even though I know I should keep it up, even as an experienced engineer that I am.
It's kind of funny because there actually was some degree of that even before the first split when we still had over 300,000 people. We had there's a major screw up where basically all the inkjet printers were phoning home when they weren't supposed to, and the company wound up DDoSing themselves from their printers on Black Friday.
That's amazing.
But during that escalation on the call, at one point, once they started figuring out what it was, and the only way to fix it was to update the firmware on all these millions of printers that are like completely out of their control. I mean, these are like consumer level inkjets, and
nothing. They just got Mariah botnetted.
Well, they actually, somebody had the idea. It's like, well, can we push this out with a Microsoft update? And the next thing you know, somebody, well, let's get Microsoft on the phone. And I mean, that's they're probably one of the relatively few companies that are in a position that they actually can get Microsoft on the phone, and they actually did wind up resolving it that way to a large extent. I mean, obviously they took what internal measures they could on the network side, but I mean, it was a mess to clean up, but I mean, a big part of it actually was getting Microsoft to push out an update for their printers, you know, through Windows Update.
But that's leveraging the relationships they have, and
Yeah,
the great news about that is what I see happening with HP, and the reason why I think this is actually a really good decision for HP is getting ahead of the game. Dell right now is colossal. Dell is a monstrosity beyond words. EMC by itself was a $26 billion organization with physical brick and mortars all over the country and all over the planet. And we start looking at Dell and EMC and all the 1,000+ businesses that EMC owns, which collectively makes it worth $26 billion, you have infrastructure costs out the wazoo. Out the wazoo. Oh, yeah. And then you start looking at what HP's doing, where they're splitting up their company, which allows them to take those costs and fragment those operational costs across multiple businesses. They're doing what I'm already doing with my business, which is I've got multiple organizations operating under the same infrastructure. So shared infrastructure, shared costs, but shared costs, lower overhead.
Yeah, I mean, going back as far as when HP bought Compaq, even up to the time they split to HP, HPI, and split again to DSC, they still never fully integrated the infrastructure from the Compaq buy.
Well, I'm pretty sure they probably just decided that they're going to take that acquisition for that infrastructure and just discharge the debt. Or sorry, not discharge the debt, but just write off the acquisition for the assets and then just deprecate.
Well, no, what I'm saying is internally the way the company operated. I mean, all I did was internal issues. I was on the Unix engineering on the internal side. We didn't deal with anybody external, and my office was in one of 6 data centers in the country where everything was supposed to be moved to globally. And I mean, they still never fully integrated. They never even finished the HP Compaq buy. Even 10 years after it was done, there was still totally separate Compaq network segments and HP network segments, and the supply chains were completely different. I mean, even if you could use the same SCSI disk in an integrity server and a ProLiant, the supply chains were totally different. You couldn't order them. We actually ran out of drives for the titanium machines, and we couldn't get them. But we had a room full of drives for the ProLiant servers, and they're both U320s, but we couldn't use one for the other. Because of the just because the internal paperwork, there's no way to use it. I mean, I just went in the parts room with a screwdriver and stuck the ProLiant drive in a integrity sled and went about my day. But but I mean, they had no paperwork way of actually doing that.
Yeah, you couldn't acquire the drives from one organization to another. And what you technically did was you did technically steal those. From a paperwork perspective, but somebody could have approved it. That's not a big deal. But the overall idea is
my manager knew what I was doing. I told him but we were up against the wall. It's like we got mission critical.
You have to push.
We have a 8-node site-to-site Oracle cluster on mission critical database that's in danger of going down because we have no redundancy on our system drives anymore. We got to get that fixed.
Well, and the only piece on that, the reason why it even really matters or is relevant is because technically when you transfer a physical asset from one organization to another, a sale has occurred. And I
understand that.
It's technically a transaction, and so all they have to do is just say, it's playing what a lot of people refer to as the funny money game, which Dell and RSA and EMC play with each other all the time. EMC and RSA and VMware did it on a regular basis while I was there, where they would buy quote unquote licenses for VMware for RSA. And I was like, why not just give them to them? It's like, oh, well, then the sale doesn't occur. And I'm like, oh, well, why is that relevant? And they're like, well, because of the profit margin. And so what they're doing is they're actually charging each other profit margin on their own product to inflate their sales.
Yeah, that was a big thing we ran into whenever the first split a couple years ago into the HP Incorporated and Hewlett Packard Enterprises. We were still supporting all the same apps internally, but now suddenly some of these customers are, oh, well, that's an HPI app. And, suddenly we had, like our department had to track our hours so the HPI side could be billed for it. And that, in that case, they actually were separate companies, when they split. But, prior to that, they were different, um, different divisions, but, nobody was actually, we weren't really involved in anything being billed. I think it was just, they're just making up a number and just, whatever accounting said, we need to show this amount of money moving from this department to that department. They just handled all that outside out of mind. But once those two companies actually split, now all of a sudden, well, geez, we actually have to account for this time. And, oh, there actually are warranties now. And that was just an utter mess because, we didn't have the manpower to
deal with it all,
to track all that before the split, let alone after, when they kept, getting rid of people too. And that was another thing. They went through a big outsourcing phase. That's why I don't work for them anymore. They got rid of everybody, was making 80 to 120 a year, and replaced them with new people in Malaysia for 12K. And not that they couldn't learn how to do what they needed to do, but they didn't. They weren't given the training. They didn't know what they were doing. And then with future splits on the horizon, well, nobody in management's going to address that problem because it'll just work itself out, or it'll work itself off of their plate. It won't work itself out, but it'll work itself off of their plate. I'm kind of curious as to what kind of shape DXC's in now, in like in a lot of the roles that my team used to do, because they were just totally getting ignored while before that split, because they knew it was a problem that wasn't going to be their problem anymore after such and such a date.
Yeah. From my conversation with them, I think I can answer that to an extent. From my conversation with the people that I spoke with, honestly at pretty good length, what's going on is there was a hiring freeze pending the complete merger for regulatory reasons, and then after the merger, they've begun a really large hiring phase, and it seems like they have a lot of very interesting things going on at the company, and I'm impressed with what I've seen so far. Whether I would ever make the jump or not.
If my old data center still has any spots available, might be able to get
well, from what they told me, they're hiring quite a lot, so yeah. I would go for it. It never hurts. Like I said, it's like it never hurts to ask, if nothing else.
Yeah, I love the environment. I mean, I loved working this is the lights out data center, but I was one of the people that actually was in there, all the time. I mean, my office is literally inside one of the data centers. I breathed the same air that the servers got. I wasn't even in the cubicle section up front. I was back in one of the
tucked
back
away
rooms.
In a corner.
Yeah. I loved it there, and I knew it was a fun job. It was challenging. Like, my job started where the flowcharts left off. When you couldn't solve a problem by if A then B, and you actually had to think, then it came up to our team, and there was nobody to push it to after us. So once we got it, we owned it until it was fixed. So
now that's called living, my friend.
it was it was fun. But it's funny, going back to what we were talking earlier with the the certifications versus experience and knowing the network foundations and all. That blew my mind for the first several years that I worked there. Because I had more of a broad and small business background. Even worked in an accounting firm for quite a while. So I kind of see things on what is cost effective to do, and why some decisions that everyone says, oh, that's stupid. Yeah, that makes perfect sense if you understand the business behind it. But so I knew how to set up VPNs for I used to do small business consulting, and I'd walk into an office, they'd give me a list of the problems they're having, what they wanted to do, and I'd figure out how to do it and get it done. Then I get into this big enterprise environment, and everybody only knew their narrow scope. There could be a guy, like when I first got on the Unix engineering team, I was elated because it's like, wow, I'm getting to work with these guys. They've been doing my dream job for 20 years, and then all of a sudden I find out they don't they don't know a damn thing about networking. They don't even understand why 255 is a round number if you count from zero.
Now.
Yeah, well, and I mean, because they didn't. Yeah, I mean, because a lot of the guys they went from high school to college to HP, and
They stayed.
they've been on the same Unix team. Yeah, maybe they jumped up a couple levels in their career path, but if they had it, they didn't know it. They never set up a home computer because they always had a company laptop. They never knew how to fix anything on any system that wasn't one of the servers they administered because there was another team for that. If they had a network problem, they call up the network guy, and the network guy says, "Oh, type IP config, and what's this say?" And, "Oh, well, click this, this, and this, and type this." "Oh, hey, it works. Wow, thanks." And they had no idea what any of it meant. Same thing with the databases. If they see a database problem, it's like, "Oh, well, send it over to the Oracle team or send it over to the SQL team." I mean, nobody. They only knew their, they knew corn shell on 10.1, and they were mad when they had to learn 11.23 and 11.31, and geez, when they inherited the Linux support, oh my God, and then when they got the stuff that wasn't standardized, that were the one-offs running the factory systems, and they're just lost. It was it took me a long time to. At first I was like, how can these guys not know this basic stuff? Well, eventually I realized because they never had to. There's always another team for that. They only had to know their job, and that's all it was a job. They didn't care how anything else worked. They just want to sit in their cube and type in their run their Swinstall scripts in their corn shell and say they patched 100 systems and go home and eat dinner.
Nowadays it's Ansible. Just Ansible everything. Ansible. It's magic.
Yeah, when I first got on their Unix team, I think we had about 2,500 servers that were all standardized. There was like one of 3 hardware models. They all had identical configurations in the data center out on the floor. They all had the same card specs, whether they were used or not. All the cables were, port 12 on this backplane was always for the backup network, and port 11 was always for the cluster interconnect. Unless it wasn't a cluster node, then it was just an empty. I mean, everything was always the same. There was only one OS version at that time. And then over the years, I mean, well, they came out with new versions, but then we started inheriting all these other things that weren't the standardized, data center hardware, and they were sitting in a phone closet in Boblingen somewhere, and then they combined the Unix and the Linux teams, and that just completely threw everybody for a loop at that time, and by the time I left, I think we had had about 15,000 servers we had to support, and our team was cut in half by that point. So, imagine going from 2,400 standardized servers that you knew what to expect, and they only did a very limited set of things, to 15,000 that could be anywhere and configured any which way but loose, and you just had to figure it out. I like that, but a lot of the the veteran guys didn't, because because they couldn't just look at their notes from 20 years ago and paste a command. They actually had to figure out what was wrong with stuff. So
they had to do a bloop 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 and a bleep bleep bleep.
Ow! That's an interesting way of putting it.
I loved having the experience there. And again, back to the guy that was talking about the certifications and all, that asked, I guess, last week. I don't have any certifications. I don't even have any college degree. I left after 1 year of college to move to a big city and start a band. and I drove trucks for a while and did all kinds of just general labor jobs for a long time. And yeah, it was a long time later that wanted to get back into IT, and I started out as just a contractor grunt, and we were rolling racks out to a new data center as it was being built. We're rolling the empty racks as they come off the truck. We had to build our own workbenches. I mean, it was like, just in, I mean, the way I looked at it from day one is like, look, I just want to get my foot in the door. Once I'm there, I'll show what I can do. So I got a glorified construction job, masqueraded as an IT position, and just busted my ass when I was there. And hell, in less than a year, I was on the Unix team and just moved up from there. But I never had any certifications. And it's kind of funny because HP was actually starting to move away. They're kind of starting to move the opposite direction, because as they started outsourcing everything, and they started having the problems caused by hiring all these people that didn't know what they were doing, they were throwing around the idea that they were going to start their own internal certifications and require those. And I guess their thinking was that would eliminate the problems they're having from their current, the knowledge gaps of the people they're hiring.
Which never works.
No.
And it never works. It never works. And that's one thing that I'll tell everybody, just out the door. If you're outsourcing and your contractors aren't getting the job done, look at your job rates, look at the market rates, add a 50% margin on top of that between your current rates and the market standard rates, and try again with completely different companies. Cut all of your contractors loose and start again, because you most likely went way too low on your performance points in terms of payout, and you're just not going to be able to find the quality talent that you need. Anybody can go hire somebody to be a SOC analyst for $10
Actually,
an hour.
all this outsourcing, a large chunk of it was not contractors. I mean, I was a full-time employee, and I started out as a contractor, but in less than a year, I got on as an actual,
So they
FTE.
converted you.
Yeah, and most of everybody I worked with was, with very few exceptions, were also FTEs, and even when they started outsourcing, they weren't outsourcing to contract workers. They were just outsourcing to cheaper countries to have employees.
Yeah, and then that's what I'm saying is what ends up happening is you're going to go to a country that doesn't have the educational infrastructure to begin with, or the generic pool of expertise that's required to do the job. So if I go out to San Francisco and I cut my entire developer shop, which I could easily do, $200,000 a person, absolutely, I'm gonna let y'all go. I can go to Poland and get much better programmers for a quarter of the price, and they're 10 tiers higher than you are. And according to HackerOne and many other polls, in terms of actual raw performance when it comes down to coding capabilities, it's proven. It's a fact. People like it or don't. That's the life that we live. That's the reality. And that's because a lot of guys from Soviet rolled over to Poland when they were fleeing the country, and they stayed in Poland, and there's a massive amount of coding talent there. Yeah,
I understand but they're hiring cheap people that didn't have the skills.
Yeah, well, that's the issue, and that's what I'm saying is what ends up happening a lot of times is people aren't going to actually assess the markets and see where the talent actually is. They're going to go out, they're going to cut all the people in San Francisco, they're going to go straight to India, and they're going to say, oh, well, I've got price rates of a Swift developer for $15 an hour instead of having somebody for $85 an hour. And they're going to be like, oh, well, I can get 6 developers for the price of 1. I'm like, yeah, and now you have to hire a manager. Yeah. And so your cost went up to manage 6 people, and those 6 people are going to be able to normally deliver 40 to 70% of what your previous developer did, because you went tiers down in performance instead of up in performance. Now, had you gone to somewhere like Warsaw, your quality would have gone up and your costs would have gone down, or Canada. But that's because you're leveraging the value of the dollar against a poorer country, or a country that has a lower grade value of the dollar. But they still have high quality talent and good educational systems, which is something that a lot of business managers don't make the educational assessment of. And it's a very well-known fact in the educational industry that a lot of countries like India is a lot of corruption in the educational industry. There's a lot of issues in the educational industry. The quality of education there is second rate at best. And a lot of the people that are produced are literally just degree mills. And it's the issue of quality. There's no quality there. There's no vocational quality there. And a lot of those people there are desperate for jobs because of the mass population, a low availability of high-end jobs. And that's why H-1B programs are popular here in the U.S.
Yeah, towards the end when I was there, it was getting very bad. I actually lasted on the payroll there about a year after I thought they'd be dissolving my team. I mean, I was one of the last ones out, and at least on my team. And but it was getting so bad towards the end. I was actually engaged in an escalation to explain to the GDBA how to use DOS to Unix.
That makes me sad.
Yeah, and it was things like that just week after week. I mean, it went from actually having challenging problems to to have to identify and mitigate and eventually correct long term in the postmortem. To having to use Google for other teams because they didn't know how. I mean, it got very bad.
Well, again, the issue is what ends up happening in that situation is actually a really common reoccurring issue. And the problem is guys like you a lot of times won't escalate that problem to the management, who will escalate that problem to people who need to know about it.
Our management was fully aware. That was the topic. I was bringing it up I was bringing it up every week in our team meetings. I was running down the list of all the stupid shit that we had to do that took time away from doing what we were actually talented at doing.
Yeah, yeah. But the issue is what it ends up happening is it'll get to your manager, and that issue may get to their manager. But a lot of times you have 3 or 4 layers of middle management between you and the actual decision makers, and not just somebody who's just going to listen to your problems and escalate reports.
Yeah,
which ends up happening a lot more often.
I was 6 hops from the CEO, and so 5 hops from the
your complaints were never making it.
Yeah, 4 hops from the guy that had absolute authority to fix our problems, but he was also the guy that was on his way to getting a nice bonus for his new reorganization plan of doing exactly the things that are causing the problems. And there really was no way to bring up that issue because the management that that guy's direct supports aren't going to tell him, hey, your plans aren't working, they're causing us problems. He's not going to have any of that because he's
going to lop a head off and put somebody else in that's going to shut the fuck up about it.
The best way to deal with that issue. The best way to deal with that issue a lot is to simply just tell them no and tell them you don't have time. Because what I always do when I'm in the area is if I have the ability to give you assistance, I will. But I'm not going to set my task to the side so I can do your job for you. What I will do is I will be working on my tasks, and if I have the ability to spare cycles in between tasks while things are working or compiling or transferring, then I will stop. I will give my attention to you for the moments that I can, and then I will return back to my tasks. If I can't fix your issue within my time frame, I'm not going to deal with it. Or if I feel like I can't do it, or if I feel like I have to teach you your job, I'm going to send you
I know what you're
saying. How to learn how to do your job.
I totally agree, but that couldn't work in this instance because the main focus of our job was to handle issues that if there was downtime involved, it didn't matter if everyone else was an idiot and didn't know what they were doing. If we had the ability to fix the problem and restore the uptime, and to get business continuity restored, that was our primary job description.
If that's your job description, then when the system goes down, that's when you bring it back up. But that's when you're stopping doing your dedicated tasks to step in and do somebody else's job. It sounds tacky, but it really is what's required in a lot of situations.
I know what you're saying, but we didn't have the luxury of letting it go down. If it was brought to our attention that it was in danger of going down, if we actually let it go down, then that would have been 100% on us. No.
I'm not saying let it go down if you can stop it and you can fix it. If it's about to go down, you step in and you fix it. Now, if you're working on stuff and you're not aware of it about to go down and it goes down, it's just gone down. and then you can stop what you're doing and do the
There's
critical
no way to
restore.
not be aware of it because we were engaged by numerous means, phone calls, cell phone if necessary. I mean, there's no way we're not going to be aware
Okay,
of it.
okay. I think I'm getting pieces here that I didn't see before. So you weren't a lateral, you were an escalation point.
We were the final escalation point.
Okay, so yeah, so then it was your problem on a 24/7 basis. Okay,
Yeah,
so
yeah,
okay, I thought
didn't-
I thought you were a counterpart to this organization.
Oh no.
So you were ultimately their senior. Okay,
Yeah,
so
yeah.
forget the last part that I told you. No, it is your job to fix it. Okay. Yeah, I thought they were seniors and you were seniors and you were having to stop your job as a senior to go do some other senior's job.
Well, to some extent there was that, but that only happened when they were like the senior in another department. Yeah, they were a senior in networking, or they were a senior.
Well, that's a collaborative effort. That doesn't count. That's not.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, all I'm saying is like if you're like the senior or lead Unix engineer over in the U.S. Continental, and you're having to stop what you're doing as the lead U.S. engineer Continental to go fix JPAC because their lead engineer and their entire team has no idea what they're doing, and you're having to take time and cycles from you and your team to migrate over to their environment to fix their environment while working on yours. And
the problem is we were one of the few teams that was defined globally. We didn't have regions. Yeah, I mean, we were responsible. If it was a Unix platform issue, we were responsible for it.
Okay. Global teams are different. Global teams are different. Okay, but again, so that makes you the ultimate escalation point instead of being a lateral. But the issue and the reason why I bring that up and I say do that, even though a lot of people say that's not a very team player sport and it's kind of fucked up, it's the simple reality. But here's why. If you keep juggling it like that and keep maintaining everything, what management will do is they will replicate that environment again. I've got this super A team and I've got this other super A team because they think that the other team can do the same job that you can. What they will do is they will hire another team like that. And now you have to split between 3 teams, and you may be barely hanging on to 2. And it's going to all fall through with 3.
That's exactly what was happening, especially as it got towards the end, towards the final last couple of splits companies did. It was completely going that way, and when the splits were on the horizon, that was never a problem that was going to be solved.
Yeah, they were just holding out until the inevitable of the split, and that's what they were doing. Is at that point they were what I like to call is they're Shanghai nooning it. Is they're making a run for it because they're going to blitz to noon, and they're just going to ignore every problem like it doesn't exist, like your Jackie Chan falling through 5 floors, and it's just like I don't have anything wrong. There's nothing wrong. My rib is broken. I'm fine. Because when I get to this golden tunnel, I've completed the level and I get a fresh respawn. And they just pretend like nothing happened prior to that 11:59 mark. It just didn't exist. And welcome to Shanghai noon. But the issue with that is, and the mentality is a lot of people think that is fine. But the issue is that even if you fragment your network into multiple pieces, all you've done is taken one really giant clusterfuck and turned it into a large collection of clusterfucks all over the place. The issue with that is you've also taken your team of talent where you may have a large pool of concentrated all-stars in one area, and you've taken them and you've branched them off into their own area, and then you've got these other 5 pieces of really fucked up pieces, and you've got just generic, just average Joes trying to deal with rockstar issues, and it's just not going to happen. And then all these issues are going to flood back to your current all-star team. The problem is they're going to downsize that team, stating that, oh, well, you're not supporting 30,000 servers anymore. Now you're only supporting 3,000. So we're going to downsize you by half, and then we're going to leave you with the issues. But then all of a sudden you have this holy shit moment when all these problems come flooding back and your entire enterprise is collapsing across the entire conglomerate, because you left these legacy issues in place and you never bothered to fix them. And the past comes back to haunt you.
Not to mention there are some serious design flaws in a lot of the architecture too.
And that's the part that I like to call Shanghai night, because everything dies. All the data centers go black, or you have a lot of server rooms that black out, which is hence the night part. So you have the Shanghai noon and you have the Shanghai night. And you don't want to go to Shanghai at all.
Yeah, it's kind of funny you mentioned the cloud earlier. Their version of cloud was just a ESX farm, I know, but that's what they thought it was apparently.
Right.
And so they have these, okay, you have a rack, you have several racks. Let's say a rack has 3 of these blade enclosures in it. Each enclosure has like 16 servers in it, and they set up their like a typical farm. It would usually be 16 of these blade servers, 4 in each of 4 different enclosures.
That's
and,
not very condensed. Why they do that?
Well, and then
Backplanes.
yeah, they split them up into different racks and enclosures, blah blah. But what happened was, since they were using a virtual connect environment in the blade enclosure, all 3 of those enclosures were somewhat related. Through their is using.
Yeah, so it's effectively 4 hosts in one blade rack. You have each quote unquote cloud pocket, as they're probably trying to call it, a cloud or segregated cloud, and then each of those instances is its own cloud.
Yeah, they didn't even go that far. Well, one of the big issues they ran into that came back to a design flaw was the firmware update in a stack in a rack of those 3 or 4 enclosures. There were certain firmware updates that came out that needed to be done for to address functional issues.
But you couldn't bring it offline.
Well, the way these were, you had to bring for this one to do a major firmware upgrade, you had to bring
the entire
down.
Rack.
Yeah, the whole rack, all three enclosures.
So it was the backplane firmware upgrade, wasn't it?
Well, it had to do with the virtual connect modules that did all the software-defined storage and network converged infrastructure.
Yeah, it was the backplane. It was the backplane firmware updates. Yeah,
more or less. Yeah, I mean, it was actually in the VC modules, and the backplane is one component of that. But
well, I call anything that's not the actual blades, I reference that as the backplane.
Okay, yeah, there's a large number of components in this, but for one rack or one enclosure to be brought down, that's taking 1/4 of 4 different farms down.
Yeah,
now,
you're knocking 25%.
Even that would be okay, except they designed
didn't have migration.
Well, no, they had vMotion, but they only designed the farms to survive a 2-server blackout.
So a 50% loss. So why couldn't they do that? They're only bringing one at a time down.
No.
Oh, they were logically separated and everything, weren't they?
No. One farm is 16 blades, 4 of which are in each enclosure.
Okay. So each enclosure had 16 blades total that were being leveraged, and they could only survive 2 blades going down.
Right, and you had to bring 4 down. Yeah, well, you had to bring 16. So you had to.
So they didn't do an N2, did they? They did not stay with the N2 design model.
Whoever architected it really didn't do a lot of things right. And I mean that was part of it. So if you bring one rack down for the firmware, you've got to take 3 enclosures down. Each of those 3 enclosures, have that's 12 farms that you have to take out 25% of their capacity when they're only designed to survive 12.5% out.
Yeah.
So
that was a bad design flaw. What they were trying to do is they were trying to cut corners on that dev cost, and they did not build a design to fail based model or an N2 model. They just built something that they were going to build cheap, and then they just assumed that, okay, well, I'm going to bring down 2 blades at a time.
Yeah,
they 3 blades
figured,
at a time.
Yeah, they figured, well, because we have vMotion, then we can survive any.
They tried to run it cheap.
Yeah, they're like, oh, we can survive any one of these going down. So we can survive. We'll do double that. We can survive 2 servers going down. They never, even thought about the possibility of an entire
update the entire enclosure.
And there are a whole lot of other things like there was no attention paid to what the app requirements were bandwidth wise for storage when they deploy something. So you get their
SDN had networking issues then.
Oh yeah, I mean you wind up putting one node of the cluster that handles mission critical data for the database instance, and it happens to live on the same enclosure that's got 4 nodes of an exchange farm running. And all of a sudden the exchange farm is soaking up all the bandwidth, and there's nothing left for this one node of the mission critical, of this
the critical app. Yeah.
Yeah, and yeah, and then the app team's like, well, our other servers are fine. It's like, well, yeah, they're in
because
different
all the bandwidth is
enclosures.
gone.
Yeah, yeah, and they're like, well, yeah, I mean, there's nothing that I could do about that from a server side, admin side.
Because those are what, fiber cards? They're fiber cards.
Well, yeah. The Virtual Connect modules had fiber uplinks, but each uplink port out of the enclosure was 10 gigs, and it could split between all the servers. But all the servers were basically told inside that all the servers thought they each had multiple 10 gig SAN links.
Yeah, so they oversubscribed the entire network to begin with, which was a terrible idea.
Yeah, and that's so. Yeah, so you got what, 16 times 3? Yeah, you got servers that all think they've got.
They all got a 10 gig link.
Yeah, well, they think they all have 40. You know, they think they all have 4 10 gig ports they can use for networking and storage.
Wow.
And you got that times 16 servers times 3 enclosures, and it's all being bottlenecked out. You know,
yeah, you're oversubscribed. Yeah, you're oversubscribed by like what, 4,000%.
Yeah, and most of the time that's fine because very few apps really need 10 gig throughput.
Yeah,
you know?
But when you're running something like email is going to eat as much as you feed it.
Yeah, and yeah. So there's the internal exchange servers for a global company. I mean,
just got wrecked. They probably had what, 2 clusters for their transport edge servers, and then everything else just got fed into the direct internal.
I don't even know the layout on the Microsoft side because we're strictly on the RHEL and HPUX and Debian side of things. So.
Yeah, I don't know too much about HTUX. I couldn't speak to that.
Yeah, it's just like Solaris or any other Unix. It's HP's version of Unix. I liked it. Yeah, in fact, I've got an HBox box here, but there are a lot of design issues, and and even just in the data center itself. I mean, it was fine when it was built out, but 5-6 years later, we had SAN bottlenecks all over the place. Because when the place was first built out, it was like, wow, we've got almost 2 petabytes of information. And then after several years, it's like we've got databases that are damn near using that much, just for that instance, and they just, they're just bottlenecks, and I mean there are a lot of issues happen because of that. Some apps could handle having to wait on SAN, but some couldn't. Especially when they're running on a server that thinks it's got 40 gigs to SAN, and it's got a 2-second timeout or a 2-second delay on a transaction. There are a number of problems that happen from that. I mean, we had clusters that would crash because it thought it timed out and lost its connection when really it was just waiting to hear back from SAN because of SAN saturation. There's and a lot of that did make it interesting to work there, and when things got really crazy, it actually gave a good bit of comic relief, which helped my sanity for that last year I was there. But it got to that point where you had to not care and laugh at it, otherwise you'd just you'd go insane. So.
Yeah, no, I totally understand that.
It was interesting, though. I mean, yeah, and I understood. I mean, I understand why they did an awful lot of what they did, but yeah, that doesn't make it
a good decision.
Yeah, it doesn't necessarily. It doesn't make it. It makes it the right thing to do for the short term for the shareholders, but not for the company.
Yeah, as a cost control measure, a lot of times cost control measures sound like good ideas on paper, and they sound like good pitches to management until you get to a point where you have to actually start dealing with the bite back on the decision itself, to where you're looking at the situation and you're now assessing whether or not you're going to have a critical failure, and then you start to realize very, very quickly that you're going to have an inevitable critical failure, because even left to its own devices, to its own means. You leave those servers running long enough, eventually you're going to start experiencing blade failure. And that's just because hardware dies naturally from usage. 3 to 5 years is a good prime for hardware over a long period of time. And eventually what you're going to end up experiencing is eventually they're just going to stop running. 3 to 5 years, maybe 7 if you're lucky. If you have really good vendor tech and vendor hardware and your manufacturing process and logistics is good, it may live up to 10 years in production, but eventually it will start to fail. And when it does, you're going to have serious issues. And so from the get-go, that was a bad decision through and through, but they weren't looking at a long-term outcome at all. And so ultimately what they were just doing is kicking the can down the road and letting it fall on some other executive's lap, which honestly, I think that those practices there are the reason why a lot of companies are failing today.
Oh, I don't doubt it. And I'm sure the same thing was happening in the, like on the security side of things too. I remember
Yahoo.
Yeah, I mean,
let me just point at Yahoo and just drop the mic.
I was in, there was an escalation manager paying me one time, and I'd worked with those guys before, and they understood how frustrated me and others on my team were on a lot of time, and a lot of times they kind of ping me in the background instead of officially dragging me in, and because they're looking for a way to not have to do this escalation or to push it off to someone where closer to where it should be in the first place. But one of the escalation managers pinged me on there's some they found a security breach and it was on a Tomcat server, and and that's apparently they're mitigating that. And I forget the exact question the guy asked me, but it didn't make sense to me. But I didn't really want to get involved in it because there was a separate team that supposedly was handling it, and really was supposed to handle it. I just happened to be a guy that understood networking and security and stuff like that. But so he was just trying to get some information from me, and I gave him, I told him what he needed to know, and he went about some things. And a little, like half an hour later, I had another thought on something. I pinged him on something, to give him a little more input. And he was like, "Oh, no, don't worry about it." It's like, they're not pursuing it any further. They're not concerned about it. It was just on our internal servers. It wasn't external facing. Like somehow they had
it better.
I mean, somebody compromised the soft chewy center, and that's not an issue because it wasn't the external facing. I mean, what? The exact opposite of what should have happened, and so it was a royal mess, and towards the end, but overall it was very, it was overall it was still an enjoyable place to be. I mean, the first several years were awesome. I mean, I love getting my hands on the $1 million computing toys, and because we actually they kind of adopted, because we sat in the data center. Our team also did our own hands-on hardware repairs. And that was great because we never had to wait for the field engineers and the part swappers to come in. I mean,
just drive apart and rack and stack.
Yeah. I mean, I literally walked out my door and I could put my hand on the parts room door and go in there, sign out what I need, and walk down the data center, biometric my way in, and swap what needs to be swapped. And and that.
I kid you not. If I ever find my way into one of those rooms, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to walk over to the parts and just roll in them and just like cover myself in packs of RAM. It'd be great.
I actually was, I started, because like we had to send back, I mean, we had to send back all the parts, but after a while, it's like, we started realizing, it's like, well, okay, we got to send them back, but they never really state what condition they need to be sent back in. So I started kind of just like pushing buttons here and there, seeing, okay, is this all right? Is this acceptable? Is anyone complaining about this? And it got to the point where by the time I left, I've got like hundreds of neodymium hard drive magnets, you know, I mean, anytime I had to swap a drive, I'd take them apart, take the magnets out. You know, yeah. Sometimes I'd take the platters out just because they kind of look neat when you got a bunch of them. They're all shiny and hot, but and yeah, some of these like 3-phase 84-watt power supplies, PV, inductors and transformers in them. I started bringing the desoldering iron into work. I'd take them apart and start popping parts out of them.
I need step-up converters right now. If anybody knows what it is, I need I think a 2,500 watt step up. I've got the first blade chassis that came in, so I've got to turn this place into 3-phase somehow.
Mm-hmm. That's you can't get 3-phase natively there.
Oh God, I'm in the middle of the sticks. I'd be lucky if they ever agreed to that.
I was thinking for your data centers.
Oh dear Lord, no! If I didn't have 3-phase in my data centers, I'd start flipping tables.
Yeah, I mean, we had 2 power substations on our property.
Shit, I wish.
And each cell, we had 3 cells, and each cell had an A side and a B side, and each side had a 3 megawatt standby generator that would go from sitting cold and powered off to full output in 15 seconds.
That's nice. But yeah.
It was sweet. Yeah, and so it was cool. That was part of what I liked about being around there. It's like once a year they do the the utility power cut testing, and I used to follow them around, go outside, and and just hear the just the massive switches being thrown, and watching all the UPSs kick on, and
the ATS switching units are actually really cool. Surprisingly, you can actually get some really robust generators for not that much. I had to price out several to make Panda modular, so that while I'm scaling the data center, instead of going out and buying this one insanely expensive generator for like $300,000, I can go out and buy multiple $4,000 generators until I've scaled up to the point to where I can justify having a matched pair with one single large generator, and then replacing all the smaller generators on the sell-off and recouping 40 to 60% of that. It's not actually that expensive. You can get an ATS. I think I was miner sighted at 600 amps a piece, and that's running about $3,000 to $4,000 per generator, and then another 1,000 to 2,000 for the ATS unit. So it's actually not that expensive for everything, all things considered. But that gives me fully redundant CMMI level 3 power for Panda for the entire data center layout. And I just scale it for more amps.
Still?
Yeah.
Hey, Janie.
Hey.
Hey, Janie.
It's just that last time when I was like just joining in, we were talking about pandas.
Like, it's actually the first time mentioned the entire time, and you just happened to step in the one time. It's actually pretty awesome.
Okay, but I still get the impression that you talk about pandas a lot.
I do. I love Panda. I've poured my heart and soul into Panda, and I will talk about it, and they will listen. I will cram Debian OpenStack down their throats after all the hell I've gone through. Yeah, never build OpenStack on Debian. If anybody tells you to do it, you slap the shit out of them, and you tell them because it's I told you so, and they can come deal with me. But you slap the shit out of them because they're going to spend so much money not making it work. It is not possible. I don't give a damn what anybody says. After Newton, it stopped working, period.
Whoa, what else are we talking about today?
Large corporate decisions and
that went very wrong.
We had a few notes early on in the thing where we went over InfoSec is still a thing, and anything that happened this week. Then we went to calligraphy about how bad our handwriting was. Then we talked about a hacktivist who broke into the Minnesota government database to protest Fernando Castillo. I'm pretty sure he just broke in, and he used that as an excuse later on. And the information he put out there really doesn't help. It doesn't help make police.
What does that have to do with like this police officer shooting someone? Like go and knocks a bunch of random like office workers? Makes no sense.
Yeah, it doesn't help at all. it doesn't help the situation as far as making police more competent or less overreactive, let's say. And also, we talked a little bit about CAH and certifications and the importance of certifications or not. And I think the general consensus was the certifications really, in general, weren't that important.
Yep.
And probably for about the last hour or so, me and Logan just took that to all kinds of tangents, and everyone else left pretty much.
I was just here drinking my Moscow Mules.
I wish. Where's mine?
I'm afraid I can't kind of send those. As far as I know, there's no Moscow.
Hey, don't lie to me.
IP protocol.
You can rsync that to me, buddy.
Not all the way down in Atlanta.
Yeah, you can. There's an app for that. You can totally do it. Don't lie to me.
Yeah, isn't that on the Star Trek app?
If there's a teleporter function. What exactly is Janie drinking?
Kombucha.
What is
Oh
kombucha?
God, that's that like fermented tea.
It tastes really good and it's good for your digestion. So.
Oh, is that what they call it?
I mean, I actually started drinking this before I even like knew what it was in the U.S. I had it first like a long time ago in Tajikistan. What year was that?
Tajikistan?
Yeah, and this Russian lady gave me some because I had like really bad, like before I went paleo, or like right when I started doing paleo. One of the reasons why I started doing paleo is because I always had like digestive problems, and surprisingly, it helped a lot when I would have like things like it's really weird in other countries. People don't really get gluten intolerance and all that, so they think like it's okay to put flour and stuff in food just because like you say you don't want bread. They don't understand like you don't eat flour, right? And so that would happen like everywhere I went where everything had like flour in it. Like I'm trying to think of like something random. But anyways, she would always give it to me. Like she would suggest it to me, and then she made some for me. Apparently, like it's something that people make at home in some Russian families. So she made it for me, and I had no idea that kombucha and chai grip were the same thing. So when I like randomly bought a bottle of kombucha, I was like, wow, this is like that thing that I had a while back. So I've been drinking it since.
So I have to ask you, because this is one thing that I have to know.
Okay.
There's donuts. There's donuts in Russia. They're called panchki, pashki, something. But they're supposed to be like the most amazing donuts ever in the universe. And I've got to eat one, and I don't know where to go to get one, or one that's as close to authentic as possible.
Where do you live?
Georgia. I don't care how far I have to go in the U.S. to get one.
And honestly, like I'm just gonna be honest. I always hear like Russian people say like, "Oh, like our food is so good," but it's really not. Like I used to live in Russia. It's really not. Like the only thing that's good is their soups.
Yeah, I could go for some borscht right about now.
Yeah, their borscht is good, but like everything else, like their breads are really dry. I don't know if it's because of communism or whatever, where like they had to ration out oil and butter and all that, but like their food is really lacking in taste.
A beetroot soup?
Yes.
Yeah, like
I'll try it.
Actually, I can't think I've ever had borscht either.
In Tajikistan, they actually like make fun of Russians because it's like you know how like Americans make fun of like British and say like, or maybe it's like French people who make fun of British and say like their food sucks.
I'm pretty sure I'm pretty sure the French and the Americans make fun of British cuisine.
Okay, yeah. So like Russian food is kind of like ridiculed that same way because there's like this one dish that's like really famous in Central Asia. It's called plov, and it's basically like paella. If you've ever had like paella, it's similar to that. It's spelled like this. And it's really good. It's made from like lamb meat and carrots and like a thing of garlic. But yeah, like there's like this joke that when Russians make it, they just boil white rice. And they call everyone and their family and friends for like dinner, and it's just like white rice.
I said the only British cuisine I'm really familiar with is like fish and chips, and I have a local pub that actually makes some really good fish and chips. Then other things I can think of are all pretty phallic. They're like there's bangers and mash, there's spotted dick, and there's what the hell else is there? I can think of shepherd's pie. That's about the limit.
Oh, so good.
And I think that's like Scottish food, really, not really.
Okay.
Huh?
Great Britain in general, then.
It's what?
Great Britain in general, then.
Okay, so I think it's like either Scottish or Irish, because yeah. Anyways, I need to stop like bringing up random anecdotes.
You ever had Scottish eggs? Scotch eggs?
Is that when it's like inside of a ground beef ball?
Essentially, yeah. Well, sausage. They say they take a hard-boiled egg, shell it, wrap it up in sausage, bread it, and then deep fry the fucker.
Yeah, my grandma used to make something similar.
They're pretty hardcore.
I'm gonna have to try that. That actually sounds pretty interesting.
It is good. A lot of your Irish restaurants and your Scottish restaurants will serve them. I've also heard that if you're in Great Britain, you can buy them at the local like gas stations, like what do they call it? Tesco's.
Just grab a snack.
Yeah, my grandmother used to make this.
All right, I'm looking at. Let me bring it up.
I think it's like similar to that.
Yeah, it looks similar. Yes. Except
But that's like.
they base it in some kind of sauce, also.
Yeah, sometimes she would make it in the sauce, but like I liked it when she would fry it.
Is this like an Afghani dish, or is your grandma British?
My grandmother is Afghan, and maybe it was like maybe who knows? Maybe the British brought it because they brought a lot of stuff to Afghanistan. Like apparently we didn't have cups, not cups, but glasses, like glass cups.
Okay.
So
Did the British colonize Afghanistan?
No, they did not. They tried 3 times, and all 3 times we succeeded, including my grandfather. I kind of wish sometimes that they did succeed, though.
It's like, this shit's too mountainous. Fuck this shit.
It's actually kind of sad because, like, in one of the wars, I think, like, literally not a single soldier was left. And the sad part was, like, they killed their wives and kids as well.
Yeah.
So, like, they really, like, they basically took no prisoners.
Just
Yeah,
an
they have a
annihilation.
reputation for being kind of cruel. But then again, they were trying to colonize them, so maybe they're just fine.
Wait. Who's killing whose wives and kids? Wait, I'm confused.
The Afghanis were killing the British.
Ah.
Yeah, obviously, thank you.
Then there's things like those times when the British get along really well with some people, like they colonize, like the Gurkhas. Like the Gurkhas of, what is it, Nepal? Who end up becoming British fucking troops and some of the biggest badasses in the British Army Empire. I'm not sure how that worked out.
In Afghanistan, they're really nice, cool guys, generally.
What, Gurkhas?
Yeah.
I know very little about them other than hearing like a few vague statements. By the way, how do you think the beard's coming along? This is going to be my DEF CON beard contest entry.
I've been staring at it the entire time and just touching mine in just pure raw, unadulterated jealousy. I'm just like, it is unworthy as I keep touching mine.
Yeah, this has been going since last September, and I plan on shaving it for charity at DerbyCon this year.
Aww.
Yeah.
Wait. Okay, never mind.
What were you going to ask?
Did you say you're, like, when you shave it, does it go to charity, the actual beard?
We're not sure how we're going to do that yet. I'm thinking maybe auction it off to the highest bidder. Or somebody else suggested everybody that puts in $5 gets to pull out a hair. I'm not sure about this idea.
Not a good idea.
That sounds painful. But I'm going to enter it in the DEF CON beard contest before that then.
What other contests does DEF CON have?
Oh, a shitload. I don't know. They have sometimes have a lockpicking contest. They have a CTF or the general hacking, but I think you have to have pre-entry qualifier for that. There's the Hacker Jeopardy. And what all else? The Canadian Cuck runs something sometimes called 1,000 penny Canadian pyramid. I don't remember what all else, but there's a bunch of contests at DEF CON. I don't really follow them all. Are you going to be at DEF CON this year?
No, unfortunately. I'm like really sad about that.
Oh.
I'm legit really upset, but I'm trying to be an adult about it. On the bright side, I get to get an OSCP certification for training or whatever.
Ah, cool, Bean. Talk with Becky about that some, because she's also taking that right now, apparently.
Okay. Yeah. I probably won't be doing
HR.
it soon. Maybe in like a month or two.
I didn't look at some of the training stuff. I haven't really looked into it as much as I should have, but I need to get out there and do some training.
Yeah, I can't really think of a lot of useful trainings other than like the OSCP. Because like every person who I ask at my job, for example, you know, like they have a really hard time of like coming up with a good training other than OSCP. But it's like, what if I want to learn something else that's not networking?
Well, I know Sans has courses on about everything, and I know the general intro to security is pretty good, but then again, that's something that's already, you know, you're already beyond that. So they have a pen testing course which I think is like $490, which isn't bad. I don't know if it compares at all whatsoever to the OSCP.
What are you trying to do?
Was that?
What is she trying to do? What is she wanting to do? The question. I know tons of training companies and organizations and content, but what are you trying to do is the better question. There's something for everything. Hell, you can take a course on being a diesel truck driver, but what do you want to do?
Are you asking me?
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, to be honest, like, it's sometimes better to just shadow people than, like, take a course on something that someone can show you in, like, for example, I can read something in an hour, but someone can teach me about it in, like, 5 minutes. So I'm also thinking of of ideas that are more productive ways to spend my time.
Okay, hang on. I've got something for you.
Okay, go ahead.
Send it to you. Hang on. I've got to pull it up. All right. And then load. All right. I'll send you this site. The training is cheap, but effective. The wide berth of areas. Joe is a mentor of mine, a good friend. He was actually one of my earliest hardcore mentors in security. Joe is incredibly good at what he does. He's done several talks across multiple places. There is some drama behind Joe, depending on who you talk to and who you ask. But overall, Joe's content is incredibly good. And the average cost for his classes are $50 to $150, $200. They're all very good classes. I've taken quite a few of them myself, everything from his Python courses to his PowerShell and everything in between. They're all very good content, and they're all very quick. I mean, you can do one of them, one set of them was one class a night for one topic a night. And we did Python one night for 3 nights, and then we did PowerShell for 2 nights, and then web application firewalls for a night. But it's all very good content. There's a laundry list of courses you can look at. If you want his email, I can get it for you. You can reach out to him on Twitter as well. But very good content, a really good starting place if you learn by hands-on. And I have about 2 or 3 terabytes of training content. So between Joe and me and all my content, I can drown you.
Yes, please.
Forever.
Yeah, this looks pretty good, actually. Like, I actually am interested in the stuff that he's offering. So let's get in touch.
Okay. I'll send. How do you PM people on this?
My God.
Is that a thing? I don't use Google Hangouts. Okay, all I did was make you look huge. Okay. Adrian, how do I Google Hangouts?
Oh my god.
I have no idea how to Google Hangouts.
Me either. It's like giving me an Apple product. It's just not going to end well.
As far as I know, I don't think you can do PMs in this.
Wow. Worthless. Okay.
There probably is
let's
a way,
do
but it's
this
the
then.
same thing. I don't know how you use it either.
Janie, I'm sure you have Adrian's contact info or his Twitter. Get his contact info over to. Don't do that. Don't do that. Don't do that. That's now everybody who's watching this now has your email.
No, the Hangouts chat is separate from the YouTube. That anything you put in the Hangouts chat, it is not visible.
Okay, so that's not being captured.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I was about to say, just have Adrian get the contact information to Adrian. He can get it to me, and then I'll work at that channel. That way, yeah. I don't want you to put your info out there, even if it's just yeah. It's just a thing. But yeah, I'll send you an email. Actually, let me make sure you get it now. I will forget. I have a gerbil memory.
Yeah, Jenny normally can't join these chats till much later on because she's on West Coast time and I'm on East Coast time.
Yeah.
All right, I'm gonna forward you this.
Oh, dude, I'm dealing with somebody online. Someone's complaining because, they got blocked by somebody who's whining because they think they want people to do a witch hunt for folks who've add Pepe memes to the Slack chat.
Oh my god, who is this person?
Some guy, Mark Heeland. He looks at least my age, but he's from San Francisco Bay Area.
That's amazing.
Yeah, that does not surprise me one bit.
Well, what's the big deal behind the Pepe thing? Okay, I have to know. I'm socially deprived, so I need to know what's going on with this Pepe thing. It seems to be a huge riot, but I just think it's funny.
All right, basically, Pepe was a big thing on 4chan. It started off with a boys' club comic strip. I can't remember the guy who wrote that. And people started posting Smug Pepe, Smiley Pepe, and then there's some other guy whose name I escaped.
Pepe.
Yeah, and then at some point in time, it was generally shitposts online that popularized it. But the shitposters at one point kind of collided with the alt-right people to a degree.
Oh boy!
And then somehow some of the alt-right people, at least are 1488ers, which we won't talk about with 1488ers exactly, but they actually are like white separatist types.
Oh boy!
And so Pepe all of a sudden became, to some people, a white supremacist symbol because of bringing it up in a talk which she had very little actual idea about. But then there's other shitposters who just love Pepe because Pepe's been on 4chan, and they generally use him as like a distant symbol of chaos. And there's actually then Stargate Kai decided to make a made-up ethnic group to try to get in the British census called Kekistani. And the Kekistani symbol, Kekistanis are represented as Pepes. And then the alt-writers are like pissed off at Sargon and the Kekistani folks because like you're stealing all meme, well, it was everybody's meme at some point in time. Pepe
so it's just pure chaos.
Yeah, Pepe means whatever you want it to mean, depending on who you use it, who's using it, and in what context.
Okay, so it's just one of those things I'm just gonna avoid for
probably the easiest thing to do.
Yeah, it's just one of those things you're walking into a minefield. You might as well just avoid it. Yeah, Janie, did you get that email I sent you?
Let me check. Yeah, I need this phone. Okay, I almost said your full name. Like, oh, are you?
Oh, that's fine. I don't care. People, I'm Logan Hicks. I live in Georgia. Huh? Don't bother swatting me. They all know me. Yeah, I'll get a phone call long before I'll get swatted. I promise.
I'm ordering some pizzas.
Yeah. You can order me pizza. They don't deliver here, so you're shit out of luck. No one delivers food here, and the police are gonna come knocking on the door long, or if they call, they're probably not gonna come at all. Yeah, so don't waste your time, and don't bother doxing me. All my information's out there already. I put it there myself.
Okay,
You can
cool.
actually Google my cell phone, just so you know.
Okay, I got it. Thank you.
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, this guy, he seems like legit. So
Yeah, he's legit. Like he's too legit to quit. He's what's up.
Wait, now I really want to hear about this drama regarding him.
All right, so this is hearsay. I have been able to validate none of it. All right, so it's just bullshit until I see real shit, until I get some real data. But allegedly, at some point in Joe's career, he was allegedly have said to have taken this content of some kind from somebody, allegedly. I don't know. I haven't seen it. The content that I've seen him do, I've seen him make it, and I know because I've been a mentee, and I've actually made content for Joe. So I know for a fact where his content comes from my experience.
Joe McCray?
So, yeah.
I only vaguely know the guy, but he seems like a nice fella.
Yeah, he's a great guy. I don't believe it, to be honest. I just believe it was some random company that's trying to say something just to try to get their name out there, and just trying to cause issues and drama, jealousy, trying to attack a competitor. Who knows? I don't know. I don't know the story behind it, so I can't speak to it intelligently. But what I will say is from my personal experience with Joe, he's an incredible mentor. He's an incredible teacher. His content is great. I've helped him make content in the past with other mentees that he's had for years. So I know for a fact that they make the content for him and they are compensated for that, with free training and money sometimes. So the DEF CON trips and stuff like that. So they're compensated for their time. And it's a very well expressed agreement. So everybody knows what they're getting into. So any things from their piece, I can't say yay or nay to, and I wouldn't try to because I don't know. But from my experience with Joe, he's legit. And from my my engagements, Joe has had some issues in the past with delivering stuff on time, but that's because he bit off more than he can chew, in my opinion, and was just dealing with too much all at once. And it happens to everybody. Hell, it happens to me. So I'm not perfect, and I'm not gonna call I'm not gonna be the teapot calling the kettle black. But I mean, shit happens, and so I mean, I get it. I paid for a class. Joe wasn't able to teach me the entire class. He fell through on it. He reimbursed people the money. Me, I told Joe I want another class. I don't want the money back. I want his time, not his cash. And so he gave me another class and comped me another class in the future. And I just took another class free of charge. So he made good on his deal.
I'd like to get Joe to come speak at DerbyCon. If for no reason, back in 2010, what was that?
Go ahead,
Sorry,
Jenny.
I just like read some random news about some teenage girl murdering an Uber driver, but you'll never hear about that in the news, right?
Holy shit.
Okay.
That's hardcore.
Gotta watch out for them teeny boppers.
Yeah, you should definitely.
I know.
If you can get Joe to come out to a con to do a talk, that would be absolutely outstanding. I would definitely come out.
I ever got to record him, and I record a lot of cons, but I don't get down to Texas much. And he's out of Texas, right?
I don't know where Joe's out of right now. I think he's out in DC right now doing some stuff, but I can't speak to that.
I got to record him once at B-Sides, Rhode Island, I believe it was. I like him at DerbyCon because in 2010, this is like 7 years ago, I remember talking to him a little bit on a bus to B-Sides, Las Vegas, go for themselves. And I asked him about, you think we can get 300 people to show up for a con in Louisville? And he doubted it, and I doubted it myself at the time. But that was before we did our first DerbyCon.
I found it, 2013. Here.
Oh, yo, wait, the talk?
Yeah, I actually found it.
Cool.
He did the exploit dev talk. B-Sides Rhode Island 2013.
Oh, and that's back when I was still compositing everything in AVI Synth. Which, truthfully, in some ways, looks better than my current system, but with a lot more work. But I would like to get Joe out there for DerbyCon sometime. Just a matter of submit a talk, man. Submit a talk, and I'll say more than likely this is like total shit, which I don't.
I would love to get a talk at DerbyCon. I would fucking love to get a talk at DerbyCon.
Well, submit, motherfucker.
I have so many talks coming back. I'm forgetting that I've already submitted to some of these places. Like, I've got like 6 on my bracket already, and I'm still waiting to hear back from one organization. I don't want to say anything because I don't know about the rules or whatever, but I submitted to him. A dude told me he'd get back to me on telling me whether it got accepted or not, and I'm still waiting for it, and that one's like less than 2 months away. I'm not going to say where, but it's, yeah. But I want to do that one because I'm already going to be in the area for something else, and that's all I'm going to say about that. But yeah, I want to do that one. I definitely want to do DerbyCon. I really want to do Luxembourg just because. I want to do Hacklu just because Hacklu. Like, the only reason why. Well, and also because they seem like a great group of people, and honestly, I would love to see a really nice hackerspace pop up in Luxembourg. It'd be a really nice addition to the community, especially since there's so much fintech rolling around in Luxembourg. It'd be really cool to see what they roll out with, because the hackerspaces, if you have interesting things, especially related to area, geographical or area-specific industry like fintech for them, it would be very easy for them to get funded for some really cool stuff. And that'd be fun to see the output from that. But, I mean, just overall, it would be cool to also go out there and see the area. But, yeah, I really want to get that one. It is one of my life goals to get a talk at DEF CON. Just so I can be like, yeah,
DEF CON's not that hard to get into by virtue of other cons. I've had free talks at DEF CON. Getting in at ShmooCon's a lot harder.
You know, I think I have better odds at ShmooCon than I do DEF CON. I don't think ShmooCon's a harder.
I've only got one talk accepted there ever. I've had free talks accepted at DEF CON, so I dare say ShmooCon is harder.
Yeah, you just have to do something really way out there to get something accepted to ShmooCon. It just has to be cool. Like, it's like I did like mid-air drone hacking with a Raspberry Pi. Now that would be awesome. Having a drone hijack drones and then have the drone like drag it away with, I don't know, like perimeter based detection with wireless, like just hacking it. That'd be really cool.
My days at speaking of DEF CON may be done because Nikita hates me now. But
who?
Nikita.
Who's that?
Never mind then if you don't know.
Yeah. No idea. That may just be because does she have any open source projects?
She's like the secretary at DEF CON.
Okay, I don't know her. If she's just a placeholder or something, I don't know her. I mean, I only really track people who are active in the community that contribute code. And that's because for me to recognize somebody in the community, they have to have contributed code. And it's just
code. You recognize me.
I do, but you've contributed code without contributing applications. You've contributed like this AmazeSauce website that gives everybody astronomical amounts of information. And sir, that is code because there is a website. Ergo, there is code. Yeah, it doesn't have to be in GitHub to be contributed code, sir. Just so you're aware. Websites do not spawn themselves, contrary to popular belief.
I got my 90s level HTML out there.
That works. It qualifies you.
Actually, by that definition, tweets would count.
Hey, it does. It does. As dumb as it sounds, but it does. But for me, the way I see it is very simple. If you can write a single line of code, it doesn't matter. Just one line of code you've given to a project. It could be something as dumb as somebody like what you asked about earlier today, Adrian, about the Python question. I looked it up. What I did is I pulled the actual source code for that application. I tried to figure out what you were using, and that's why I asked the Crack Me piece. I was trying to figure out if you're using Kali Linux or if you're using some kind of just a derivative custom build install.
I'm using Ubuntu and Kali, and it's broken on both of them.
Yeah, and then
the damn crypto library, it's fucked up.
Well, that's the piece that I sent you was the piece that was missing for the K1, K2. I sent you that. That's the actual source code for that application. That's probably not.
And my source code looks the same. It's still fucked up.
Oh, well, if it looks the same and it's still fucked up, that's a developer question. That's beyond me. But I contributed today 4 lines of code with 15 seconds of Googling. And that's the simple gist of it is for me, what I need to see from people in order for me to recognize them is I want to see that you're actually engaging the community. I've got a question. I've got this problem. It's not 4 dudes in IRC answering all the Debian questions on the planet. And it's you look in the average IRC channel, it's 700 to 1,700 people in the channel, and 4 fucking people are answering all the questions for every human being who steps in there. It's normally 4 to 6 people in Debian. It's about 3 in Ubuntu, and it's me and Son Goku for FreeNAS. And me and him are the only motherfuckers in there that are answering questions on Freenode. It's nobody else. And there's like 1,700 people in that channel. I shit you not. Let me tell you real quick. $519 right now. But yeah, it's me and Son Goku. That's about it. But my whole point is you have all these people that say they're quote unquote active in the community, but then when you look at their average background, they're not doing anything for the community other than just showing up, gaining some kind of internalized self-benefit, and then leaving. They're not actually contributing anything. It's the same thing that pisses me off about open source developers is they'll make this amazing program like afraid.org is amazing. It's mind-blowing how awesome it is. I use it. I love it. I have not been able to contribute yet because what I want to do is drag the entire system into my data center and host them forever and just say, fuck it, keep the money. I don't care. Because what they do for the community is incredible. They help over 1 million members, 1 million people in the IT industry leverage their platform. Less than 3,000 fucking people give to it. That's less than 3% of the entire population is contributing to the entire program that they're leveraging. 3,000 people, 1,000,012 something users. And that's what just blows my mind is so few people actually give. And the giving increments is $5. The average IT person makes $60,000 to $120,000 in the United States. Even if it's just people in the US giving, there should be a lot more than 2,000 for a global platform. And that's where I see the issue from is if you're not giving cash, give a line of code. Give a line of code. You gave something. And it may be one commit, but it's one more commit that they don't have to give themselves. It's one more step of 3 to 5 minutes that they don't have to go out and grab themselves because you gave it to them. And to me, that matters. Because if you get enough people doing that with the, 10, 15 million people working on Ubuntu, using Ubuntu, each one gives a line of code, that's 15 million lines of code. That rebuilds it 7 times over. So if you do something like that, it's very small, and a lot of people don't look at it like it means anything, but one line of code will very, very quickly add up to something really incredible if you give it. But if you don't give anything, to me, you're just a parasite. You're just there to suck away energy. And ultimately, people are the very thing that I do on my talk, the part of my Panda talk is a lot of people just end up being vampired into oblivion. Is either less than a year is the highest point of critical failure for a project where they just quit and give up, or the 3-year mark where over 85% of all open source projects fail and they just disappear because people just say, I'm just done with dealing with this, and they just throw it away. And then it's just gone. There's no handoff. There's no exchange. There's no I'm going to give it to the community. It's just gone. And I'm really tired of that because so many people pour so many cycles into this stuff to it's just gone one day. An application I was just looking at that looks really amazing. It's called Docker NAS. It's effectively almost an Ubuntu-based-esque free NAS, but not quite free NAS for Docker containers. And I think the last time a cycle was given to it was like 2 years ago. 2 years ago? Let me look that up real quick.
Now, imagine open source projects. I mean, the few ones I've been dealt with, I really didn't collaborate too much with other people other than I wrote the beginnings of it and gave it to someone else.
Yeah, the last contribution to it from where I can see, the last commit was 2014. My apologies. It was 3 years ago was the last commit to that code base. So yeah, but it's a Debian 8, so it's obviously relatively out of date there. And again, like I said, the last commit was December 31st,
A lot of open source projects too, though, they're just, somebody's doing it for their thesis or for some college project, and they never have any intent of taking it anywhere. They're just doing it because they have to get their degree or to complete some requirement for job X or something.
Yeah, and that is a reality. That is the truth in a lot of instances. But again, that's one of the things that I do with Panda is we pick up those projects, we absorb them so they don't die. But even more so with Docker NAS, I specifically know that Docker NAS was one said project that I'm talking about, specifically because I found it in the forums where I actually found the initial messages where he started talking about it, and you could see in his messages where he was formulating actually building it in the forums. And then as you just go down these messages, you realize it had no name. It was just a generic concept. And then you're just going back and forth with people. It's like, hey, what do you think about this idea? And then all of a sudden, by the end of it, one of the last posts, he names it Docker NAS. And then he gives you a link to it. And then after that, it just falls into oblivion like a year later. And, well, I think it's about a year later. But yeah, and that's the kind of things that I just keep seeing over and over again. The Anubis project. What happened with Virus Total before they got bought. Plague Scanner, which effectively is Virus Total all over again. Very few people even know what Plague Scanner is. It allows you to build your own custom module installation of Virus Total. You can build one customized to any AV that you want. It's an incredible program. Hardly anybody talks about it. Hardly anybody knows about it. But everybody leverages Virus Total like it's the shit. But hardly anybody even knows that Plague Scanner exists. And it's stuff like that it just falls off the map and falls through the cracks because no one contributes to it. Because if you had as many people leveraging Plague Scanner as you do Virus Total, Plague Scanner would be a fully funded application that is got $3 million in grants behind it a year. Because AV and antivirus is everything right now. Everybody's talking about next generation AV, next generation online antivirus tools, cloud-based centralized API intercommunications for threat exchange communications. All that data set you could generate with something like that. You could easily integrate a Cuckoo box with Plague Scanner. I'm doing it now. And you literally just feed it from Cuckoo directly into Plague Scanner, and it generates all that data set across all the different AVs that you build it out for, and then exports it into a really nice report that you can do in XML or YAML, and all kinds of other crazy things that you can do with it. It's insane. The thing is amazing, and again, it's another thing that just fell to the wayside because the guy that was working on it, nobody gave to it. Nobody contributed to it. He was working on it by himself, and after a while, people just say, fuck it, and they move on. And that's my soapbox.
With open source project, I mean, I can imagine, I can see myself wanting to contribute for a short amount of time to get the project to do what I want it to do, but actively development and continuing to develop, and I have to imagine it's hard to keep enthusiasm because sometimes you want to scratch that itch, take care of some kind of problem you have, but at a certain point, you just don't care to develop further.
Well, it's not even that. What I find more often than not, there's two major breaking points for the average open source developer. There's the morale and there's the financial. The morale is what I just told you about, is the issue of no one contributing, everybody using my technology, profiteering off of it, and I'm seeing nothing from it. The second is the coup de grace, which is always the cost of. Do any of you actually run an open source technology platform or any kind of open source tool or anything?
Yeah.
Any projects you do?
I started.
What's your average cost? Sorry, Adrian, go ahead.
I started True Motility many years ago, but
Okay.
I handed that off to Jeremy Druin.
Well, actually, you know what, Adrian? This is a perfect instance. How much does it cost you to run your website every month?
I honestly don't know. $120. Well, I guess about $10 a month.
All right, $10 a month. How much for the hardware?
I don't spend. I'm shared hosting, man.
Okay, you're shared hosting. Okay, so you don't have enough throughput. All right. So, shit. What's the other guy's name? Brian? Brian. Yeah. Well, you have one as well?
No, it wasn't me.
Oh, okay. Who else has the other project?
I do, but it's mostly for myself.
Okay. Okay. And I take it your expenses on that isn't very high.
No.
Yeah. Well, The average cost for the average developer for a cloud-based platform or a cloud-based accessible environment normally runs anywhere between $400 and $3,500 a month to support. That's the average cost that I've found so far. My project is a high-end project, and it's a lot more expensive than that. The average groups that I've seen for higher-end operating system costs, like the Ubuntu group, the BSD group, their costs run easily in $8,000 to $12,000 a month range, and that's not including payroll. That's just the upkeep and overhead costs, and that's for a quote-unquote smaller project. The moderate-sized projects like them, they can easily scale to incredibly expensive costs, like IWAX. Incredibly costly. I think his is like $22,000 a month, if I'm not mistaken, from what I've been told. Anything leveraging large amounts of big data computation with Watson, if you need it, easily $20,000, $30,000 a month. And open source, we're talking open source projects here. We're not talking they're making money on the side with an escalated service. We're not talking Doug's with his security onion piece. I don't even know what his costs are, but I'm pretty sure they're up there. But a lot of things that people don't take into consideration is the average developer is spending a lot of money on these projects. And most often, like with afraid.org, they're not making hardly anything back. They're breaking even if they're lucky. And I think that's what he said on his official page there. What was it? On the front page, actually. Yeah, sorry. I'm really off of my numbers. All right, so he's got 2.894 million members. He has 3,000 premium members. So I was off by quite a bit there, and I apologize for that. So, yeah, he's at 0.01% of actual paid subscribers, I think, if the math on there is right. So he doesn't even have a single percent of actual paid users, and it's just $5 a month for premium service. So again, it just exacerbates onto that issue of these guys are out there, all kinds of people all over the place, working really hard, 6, 8, 10, 12-hour days at work, and then coming back, banging on another 2, another 4, another 6 hours at home to work on these open source projects because they have full-time jobs to support themselves. And then they end up coming back to this situation again and again, day after day, and they're demoralized on one side because nobody gives to it, and they're demoralized on the other side because they're taking the hard-earned money that they got, they're working excessively large amounts of hours, and they're spending all that money, and they're not getting anything from it. They're barely getting recognition. The project is barely known about. The people who do know about it, they're just leveraging it for their own financial gains, and they're not seeing any contributions from it whatsoever. Their costs are being driven up because the people are doing that, and all in all, it leads to the inevitable collapse of morale or financial collapse to where they have to drop the project, like what happened with Anubis. And that was their formal statement, is it got too expensive and nobody was contributing, so they had to drop it, and they created a paid service instead. And it literally kills open source. It's killing open source, and open source is dying. It's not growing, it's shrinking. And it's not just shrinking, it's leaving this catastrophic trail of pieces everywhere. And you go and look at GitHub, you've got fragments of code all over the place, and none of it works. Hardly any of the projects, the code you actually pull from there actually work. I would say maybe 30-40% of the projects that I download actually operate the way that they say they do. And that's with a modest to moderate amount of modifications and configuration. Overwhelming majority of it just doesn't work. And the issue is that's not getting better. That's showing a trend of getting worse. And that's specifically because the cost of getting hardware is going up, the cost of bandwidth is going up, and the demand on the systems is going up. So you need more bandwidth, more servers, more costs, more time, because the technology is becoming more and more sophisticated, and you have the same issue. And it's not getting better. It's getting worse, like I said.
Monkey. Oh, anybody else have any other major topics to cover tonight? Anybody? Bueller? Bueller?
Bueller.
All right. Well, next week we may or may not cover watching someone else's talk and ridiculing it. I'm not quite sure. Or it may start some shit for me from various places because it's a person I've had some run-ins before. But in my defense, I did not record this talk, so it's not like I recorded it and then I'm fucking with the person. But I
You
don't
can
know
do my talk if you want. The one to the Security Onion.
Oh, okay. When was that
Yeah,
done?
I don't know.
Was that what
2014, 2015. I don't know if it got recorded or not. I'm pretty sure somebody's got a copy. I still catch hell from that from time to time.
Were you at B-Sides Augusta?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not going to make it this year. Well, I was kind of talking about last year, but this year they're going to have Pentest Fail come down and record it because he's actually semi-local. It's a lot easier for him to drive there with all the gear than it is for me to fly with all the shit I would need to record B-Sides Augusta.
Okay.
I think I did it for like 3 years in a row, but that's one I'm willing to sacrifice to someone else, you know?
Yep. I'll record it on my potato camera.
If nothing else, any other people going to be any cons I want to see yet anytime soon?
I'll see you on Saturday at Cleveland.
Oh, you mean Cleveland? Okay, sure, cool.
Yeah, I'll be doing a talk there.
All right, I shall be there as well.
Okay. Be sure to throw bananas and boo me.
How about I just throw like well, I don't know if I have any bananas, but I might have some Bloody Mary mix to throw at you.
Don't waste that. That's high quality stuff.
Oh, that's true. What if I just throw the ice at you after I drink the Bloody Mary?
There we go. That works.
That works. Anybody else have something interesting to say?
Janie does.
Janie does, but she's muted.
We can't hear you, Janie.
Unmute yourself, Janie.
I said I have something interesting to say. So that I found this tweet where someone was like, Steve Jobs was a second-generation Syrian immigrant. Don't know how to make this point clearer that we need to accept refugees. Okay, I responded using their own logic. Okay, their own logic, and I wrote Omar Mateen was a second-generation Afghan immigrant. Don't know how to make this point clearer that we don't need to accept refugees. Okay, so here's the funny thing. She quoted my tweet, and she was like, so, you have the most confusing and interesting tweet I've seen all day. Game on. Like, I literally use your own logic, lady.
Actually, even Steve Jobs, was his dad actually a refugee? To my knowledge, his dad was an immigrant.
He was an immigrant, and he put him up for adoption.
Ouch.
The mom did.
He put Jobs up for adoption?
Yeah. So it's like, well, maybe it was a good thing that the actual dad didn't raise him, because maybe he might have turned out like Omar Mateen. And
this is going to maybe raise some heckles, but there's a difference between a pure immigrant and a refugee. A refugee is you're in a hard time, we're going to let you in no matter what. An immigrant generally has to get the money, get the capabilities, and get their ass from another country.
Yeah, so I'm actually saying this as an immigrant from Afghanistan. So, there's a huge difference between my dad, for example, who spent a lot of money, time, effort, sweat, and tears coming here, as opposed to, a refugee who's paid for by taxpayer money to come here. They're not vetted. They're, for example, we were sponsored by someone who had to put his name on the line, because when you actually sponsor an immigrant, you are responsible for anything that happens to them. Like if they go on welfare, for example, and the government finds out, you have to pay all of that according to the law. If they commit a crime or whatever, you're kind of held accountable for that person. So when we came to the U.S., it was my aunt's husband who was a Peace Corps volunteer in Afghanistan. So he was a diplomat and everything. So he was our sponsor. And when we came here, we knew that, we had to get our shit together. So we're never on welfare, never using government as help or anything. My dad worked 2-3 jobs at a time. My mom worked 2 jobs at a time. It's just I see these refugees are coming here and I'm paying tax money for them to sit home all day watching Afghan TV. They're getting their full welfare money every month, tuition money to go and learn English or go learn math, or whatever, in the local community college. They're getting medical, like full medical care. They get food stamps. They get rent subsidies. Like, I know of this happening, and it does kind of like upset me, because it's like, not only is it like very easy for you, like, but you're not going to want to ever get off of this, because what is the one type of job you can work? Like a really crappy job, and you're not going to, like, would you rather work a crappy job and make nothing, or sit at home and get money to do nothing? Like, it, of course, like, they're not going to want to get off that system. So that is a current refugee system right now, where you're like, regular tax-paying Americans are working to bring people who aren't even literate in their own language. Half the Afghans I know don't even know how to read and write in their own language. The ones that are here. So they're the ones who are your Uber drivers, who have like no idea how to, like, if you're ever wondering like why they suck, it's because they're barely literate. Like, I'm always complaining, and I already know the reason why my Uber driver sucks or my Lyft driver sucks. And I always like have to pretend like I don't know where they're from, and like we're not from the same country or anything. And they always ask me, like, because they can tell from like the way I look, where are you from? And I'm just like, I'm American. Like, I don't even want to like talk with some people about this stuff, because then they'll start, like, I know the other day it was very visible that the guy was fasting, and like I had food with me, so I knew like once I say like I'm Afghan, to be like, why are you not fasting? Like, this is like, I actually know someone who told me that they were like threatened by someone because they weren't fasting. They were smoking a cigarette. Like, they should have been fasting, whatever. And it's like, geez, maybe that's why people don't, like, even people who are from that country don't want like more, ultra radical religious, like, illiterate people coming here.
Now, tell me if I'm wrong on this. Now, I'm only basing this on my vague recollection of news reports. But some of the people who get radicalized, it's not necessarily the immigrants. It's like the second generation children of immigrants.
Yeah, like Omar Mateen, he was second generation.
So I wonder how much of that is like, I'm here, my parents escaped from a country which had problems, but I get to a new country, but now I still have some kind of want for some kind of identity. And then they get radicalized. I'm not sure. I'm talking on my ass partly here. But
no, I totally agree with that. And that's what I try to tell people, is that they're easily radicalized by like the university sphere. Like, my own experience at university was like, they have these Afghan student unions, the Muslim student unions, and what do? They politicize everything. So, for example, one of the it was always like the one thing that every group did was like they always did something for Palestine. It's like, why? Like, this is Muslim student union. What does this have to do with Palestine? Why are you making it seem like if you're brown and if you're Muslim, you have to be for Palestine? Like, how is that related to your faith? Like, they're always bringing in like speakers who are basically like radicalizing brown Muslim kids, making like a guy who's never even stepped foot in the mosque, for example, is suddenly thinking, oh, this person is not for Palestine. That means that they're against my religion now. Does that like make sense?
Well, then again, out there in that general area, they have people like Blam or Bam with was it Yvette Falaka, who's a fucking school teacher.
Yeah. Oh my God.
So that's not even the college level. That's like, what does she teach? Like elementary?
Middle school.
Same difference. Either way, primary school. How about that?
For better or worse, you're kind of right, unfortunately. Well, folks, we've been running this for about 3.5 hours, and I need to get to sleep to do a pen test in the morning.
No, you're gonna jump off and do the preliminaries right now.
Do a what now?
You're gonna jump off and do the preliminaries right now.
Oh, please no. But I thank you all for joining me on the cast, and hopefully y'all get back on next week.
Yep, looking forward to it. Good night, and do well in your pen test.
Thank you very much. Y'all have a good night.
And see you, Adrian.
See ya.